Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case, a noble death. The end has got to be close now, my end, the end of a life. I still had hope not that long ago, but beaten down, tortured, abused, and humiliated, not anymore. I lie here in the dark and can only wonder what I have done to deserve this cruelty, and wonder what comes next. This makeshift graveyard is so cold. By the few dim lights, I can see the hundreds, maybe thousands of others, just like me. More are brought and dumped here every day. We cling to life with whatever little bits of energy we have left. 3, maybe 4 weeks ago, I've lost track of the days. My life was relatively normal. Yes, it was culling season, that dreaded time that comes every year when the days grow ever shorter and cold weather sets in. So I was somewhat worried, I confess. But I had survived so many seasons now that I was one of the biggest left, maybe even too big to be chosen. The people who came, the choosers, almost always favored the fairest ones, those of a certain age, about 12 to 15. I was 19 and far from fair. In fact, I was deformed. An accident when I was 7 had left an ugly scar, a bald and mangled patch too prominent to hide. Over the years, others had made fun of me with horrible names and mocking chants. It didn't help that back then I was also one of the smallest of those my age. The few elders left in our homestead tried to assure me that my size was normal, telling me that my kind simply grew slower and would catch up in time, that even my scars would fade, so much so that eventually no one would even notice. I never completely believed them, even though I wanted to. Elders like to fib, to try to make the young feel better, or alternately to scare them into behaving with their wild stories about the great harvester or the horrors of the burning winds. I guess I'm about to find out if any of those childhood tales are true. Even if my captors don't put an end to me soon, I know I can't last much longer, malnourished and exposed to the elements as I have been. Will the great harvester actually come for me to judge my life? I survived a glimpse of the burning winds, if only barely. Will I see them again at the end, in their full wrath? I try to suppress such horrible thoughts, but can't for long. Just the cold itself is almost unbearable now. And to think, up until a few weeks ago, I had never known what true cold really felt like. My whole life, or at least as far back as I could remember, I had lived on the farm. Broad fields surrounded by beautiful rolling hills with streams of the clearest water. It was all I had ever known, my home. If not for the culling, it would have been paradise. This year's choosers had already been coming for a few days, but their assessment of me so far had done nothing but reassure my beliefs. Most discounted me on size alone, with barely a glance. But others, likely those few who did seek a larger specimen, would be excited at first. They would often come up on my good side, maybe wondering how such a tall and rugged choice was still available, only to be disappointed after a closer look. During the culling, my scar was my salvation. In my youth, I had always wished that I could hide it, but now I wanted to turn my deformed side toward everyone who passed by, shove it in their faces, and dare them to pick me. "Look at the freak," I would have shouted if I had been able. "Take me. I dare you." With each new day, my confidence that I would live to see another year on the farm grew until they showed up. There was nothing particularly special about them. The four of them talked among themselves as they walked among the rows, or at least three of them did. The smallest ran about wildly playing in the new fallen snow, ignoring the shouts of the others directed toward him. I could not understand their language, and could only guess at their intentions by their expressions and gestures. The tallest of them walked past with a typical shrug and roll of his eyes when he spotted the bare area so prominent on my backside, but the woman walking next to him surprisingly stopped and lingered. The man turned back. These two stood beside me, not angrily arguing, but obviously in disagreement. Their gesturing and so blatantly pointing out my imperfections was rather embarrassing. So since I could not turn away, I shifted my attention to the fourth member of the group, a younger woman. She had taken over the group's attempts to curb the smallest one's rowdiness, and like myself, seemed inclined to ignore the couple's discussion. For some reason, I felt a strange kinship with her, though we had nothing in common except perhaps that we were of a similar age. Distracted as I was, the cold bite of sharpened steel teeth slicing into me came as a complete surprise. I would have screamed aloud in pain and defiance if I had a mouth, but a voice is not an ability of mine. If I had either arms or legs, the tools of mobility, I would have fought back. Unable to protect myself, the sawing continued, cutting straight through the heart of me from one side to the other. Toppling to the ground, the view I had known for my entire life shifted dramatically in a sickening lurch, twisting sideways as I fell and landed in the snow. Cut in half, savagely severed from my underground parts, I truly felt the cold for the first time in my life. It started at the raw, fresh amputation wound in my trunk, shooting up my nearly 9 foot of height, flowing through every branch and needle. Instinctively, I reached out for the subterranean warmth of the soil, only to find more cold and frigid air in its place. Brutally exposed to the elements like never before, I was dragged helplessly through the snow. They hauled me toward the barn, the one that I had looked at in the distance day after day, since I had grown tall enough to peek over the edge of the hillside. The familiar faces of the farming family waiting there briefly gave me hope that I could still be rescued, but they seemed friendly with the tormentors who were stealing me away, even helping them to throw me on top of their curious wagon and lash me down. Riding atop the wagon, we moved slowly away, the only home I had ever known receding behind me. But this was just the beginning of my ordeal. I was taken to their strange shelter and propped up in a corner in some bizarre mock replanting. Over the next several weeks, I was subjected to all manner of humiliation. I was bound with both lighted and glittery cords, had object of all shapes and sizes hung from my branches, and even made to wear a silly sculpted version of a tiny woman with wings on top of me. I was starved, dehydrated, and deprived of sunlight. My only small consolation was that, inside their shelter, I was able to stay warm. Along with the abuse, the group made me the focal point in odd rituals. They liked to sit in the room with me, either staring vacantly into the lights wrapped around my torso, or watching a slender lighted box on the wall showing pictures of other people and places. And each day, boxes of all shapes and sizes, wrapped in colorful designs, were placed beneath me until they were stacked so high that they crowded against my lower branches. One evening, when only the 2 eldest of the group were there, they laid on the floor beside me, stripped off their outer coverings, and proceeded to wrestle and rub against one another for some unknown purpose. After the initial humiliation of being bound and adorned, I was little more than a silent witness to the weeks of bizarre events at the shelter. They all seemed to culminate one morning when, with all the members present, the boxes were torn open and their contents examined. Each member had a stack they processed, then stacked up whatever had been inside before hauling it away. They all seemed to take great pleasure in this particular exercise. After the day of the box openings, interest in me faded. The lights wrapped around me were turned off that night and not turned back on the following morning or the next. No one sat gazing dreamily at me or laid beneath my branches, and no new boxes were set underneath. For nearly a week, I stood in the corner, ignored. Then one evening, for no apparent reason, I was noticed again. The woman turned on my lights, turned off all the other lights in the room, and she and the man sat across from me. They talked for hours, occasionally looking my way and drinking from a couple bottles until both had fallen asleep. I should have been worried that this renewed interest in me could bring with it new hardships, but I didn't have the will to care. Cut off from the earth, I was hungry, and I was so dry. The woman had thought to give me water once, but only once. That had been weeks ago. My needles had started to turn brown and become brittle. Some of the lights binding me were different than the others, and they gave off more heat. This had felt rather good weeks ago, but now they were becoming uncomfortably warm, almost hot. One spot in particular bothered me. Uncomfortable quickly rose to painful, and the small spot began to spread larger and larger. A new light began to flicker in dancing orange flares among my branches, emitting willowy black puffs at its edges. I recognized the description of the black wisps called smoke and the yellow-orange flashes of light known as fire. Great harvester. It was the burning winds, that fearsome force that engulfed entire mountainsides in searing flame, consuming whole populations of pines. But this was how they started, we were taught. A small flame now, it would grow, and grow quickly. But what could I do? The pain intensified. Nothing in life had prepared me for this. The injury from my youth, no comparison to the agony I felt now. The man and woman slept on. I did not know if their kind could do anything to combat the burning winds, but they were animals, able to move and react, do things that immobile life like me couldn't, so it might be possible. But how to wake them? Never had I wished so much to have a true voice. Desperately, I yearned to scream into the night, to sound the alarm. As my branches burned and the destruction spread, the heat became excruciating. The walls and ceiling of the shelter started to blacken around me. I tried in vain to scream, to cry out at both the pain and injustice of it all. Flames lashed at the winged figure that sat atop my highest point. As she melted and fell, from somewhere near the very top of me, a wailing siren shriek suddenly burst forth, piercing the night and demanding attention. The man and woman both awoke quickly with the blaring noise, jumping up to action or escape. I didn't know which. The undulating noise persisted. The man and woman had been asleep. There were no signs of the other two, and I could find no other source for it. Could it be? Was it possible that this noise was coming from me? The man returned carrying a red can, stood back, and sprayed a dense cloud at the flames. The cloud was cold and smelled odd. To my amazement, it quenched most of the burning winds. The woman soon reappeared with a bucket of water, ran right up to me, coughing and sputtering, but splashing or pouring water on any bits of fire that remained or tried to rekindle. If this alarming wail was indeed coming from me, I couldn't stop. I didn't know how it had started, and now I couldn't stop it. The excitement was dying out with the burning winds, but the wailing remained. Wounded, coated in residue from the cloud, I was so exhausted that at first I didn't see the young woman coming at me, brandishing a long stick. She swung it back and forth, beating at my top branch, but missing and striking the ceiling of their shelter. Whether her actions sufficiently scared me, or I simply ran out of energy, after a few moments of her flailing, the screaming finally stopped. In the dark and quiet that followed, they huddled together, staring at me. Their actions had successfully beaten back the burning winds, but without the warning alarm, would they have come too late? Had I played a part in the response? If so, would they recognize my contribution and maybe take pity on me? They left slowly. I spent the night wondering. It was a somber group the next day who stripped me bare. Most everything that had hung from my branches was tossed carelessly into a single tall drum. Very few items were packed back in their original smaller containers. I was in a truly sorry state. Nearly half my branches were gone, burned away from my side. I was blackened and charred, the little moisture that had remained in me driven out by the heat. Once the remains of the bindings had been removed, the man wrapped a large piece of cloth about me, pulled me down, and roughly shoved me back out into the cold. Outside, he dragged me a good distance away from the shelter, as if to banish me from sight. I could only guess that since the burning winds had started with me, they were blaming me for the damage. I wanted to tell him the truth, but didn't try to speak again. Even if I had been able to speak, I knew that he wouldn't be able to understand, just as I heard them speak many times, but had no idea what they were saying. He left me there and sulked away, not saying a word to me either. 2 men in a large wagon picked me up and brought me here, along with so many others. I thought at first that this was a punishment for what had happened, but now I believe that this place would have been my destiny anyway. We lay in piles upon the stony ground, unable to even feel the comfort of a bit of soil beneath us. In the 2 days I have been here, I have seen entire piles hauled to the far end of the yard. A terrible noise comes from there. The sun is up now, and the tractor-like machine that carries us away is coming for me. It lifts me up with a stack of my kinfolk and moves us toward the dreadful noise. As we approach, I can see men standing next to a large machine. I watch in horror as a man lifts a noble fir such as me, but still green and full and perfectly shaped. No matter, he feeds the poor tree into the machine, its grinding noises dropping just a fraction as if it might choke. But no, from its other end, it spits chips out into an ever-growing pile, our final resting place, though it hardly qualifies as restful. I am dumped next to the men, and before I even have time to panic, I am grabbed and carried forward. I can see into the machine now, see the spinning and glistening teeth that will be my demise. I look away in terror, but then we stop. When I dare look again, I see another man standing next to the machine, shaking his head and pointing back over his head. The men holding me start walking in the direction the other has pointed. I don't know what is happening, as I am hauled past all the other fallen trees awaiting their fate, carried to the very edge of the yard. I am cast down a hillside into a ravine. I land and slide clumsily the last few feet to the bottom, where a small creek flows through weeds and fallen leaves. There is very little snow here, but what there is on the sloped hill is pure and white. I can still hear the machinery grinding away above me, but the sound is muffled and faint, almost in another world. Because I have been transported out of the hell that was my life since being stolen from the farm, back to a world that I can understand. I am shocked, injured, as close to death as is possible, half burned away with no hope of recovering. But I have been released. Has all this suffering brought me to this place? Am I to be allowed to die a dignified, honorable death? Have I earned the right to lie upon the earth like one of the great sentinels of the forest, those that grow hundreds of feet and live hundreds of years before they finally fall to the forest floor and slowly pass back into it, until finally just a brittle husk remains, a home for some small creatures, or sustenance for future generations? If such a restful end is to be mine, then I can be at peace with that. A noble end, the captives. I have been a prisoner in this camp for more than 1 year. Many of us have died, mostly at the hands of our captors, but some from disease and trauma. Somehow I have survived, but it hasn't been easy. They beat us mercilessly today with leather straps. At least 4 men surrounded us and whipped us. They yelled at us, "Move, you stinking beasts!" They made us run into a wooden structure, then locked us in. I was afraid they would light the structure on fire with us locked inside. But whipping is not the worst. One of the men used a red-hot iron on one of us. I will never forget the screams of agony from that poor chap. It left him with horrible burns. He died soon after. I would estimate there are about 100 of us in this part of the camp. There is a big turnover, with new inmates showing up daily. About every 5 days, about 10 inmates disappear, and 10 new ones are brought in. We are given very simple food to eat, usually either a slurry of corn or a bucket of fetid mush. The captors often walk back and forth, laughing at us as we try to eat. Most of the time, we have to squeeze our heads through the bars on our cells in order to get to the food. The beatings and torture are bad, but there is something worse. Several female inmates came into the camp pregnant. When they gave birth, the men in charge immediately took the little one away, not even giving the mother a chance to see or bond with it. I can't think of anything more cruel. A few days ago, they came into our barracks and grabbed 4 unfortunate inmates. They used handheld electrified clubs and drove these 4 chaps out and into a separate building. We heard them screaming, but soon after that, there were 4 loud thuds, and then there was silence. One of our informants claims he witnessed the goings-on in there. He said he saw our compatriots hanging upside down by their legs, with their throats slit from one ear to the other. When word of this spread through the camp, there was a palpable wave of horror and panic. Detailing all the brutality and torture we have experienced seems like wasted energy. No one listens to us. There doesn't seem to be any end to this existence or hope for the future. Many of the inmates show signs of depression and severe anxiety. One inmate had been very quiet, but suddenly threw himself against the electrified fence, dying right there. The captors left him standing in his death, leaning against the fence with the full current flowing through his body, his legs twitching and spasming. We suspected that leaving him there was a message to us, not to disobey or try to escape, or that same type of destiny awaited us. Yesterday morning, a very important man visited the camp. We knew he was important because of the way he was dressed. Most of the workers in the camp wear casual clothes or military-style tactical outfits. This fellow was decked out in a 3-piece suit and had a leather overcoat slung loosely about his shoulders. He carried some type of cane or stick. A rumor spread quietly amongst the gathered that this man might be the one they call the Angel of Death. He had us line up for inspection. Any inmates not accurately in line met with an electrified club, ensuring obedience. While we were at attention, he strolled up and down the row, pointing his cane at a few of the inmates he favored. His assistant wrote down the chosen inmate's number, and once he left, those selected were taken away and led into the back of a large truck, never to be seen again. I sometimes stand quietly outside the barracks, and I can see life way off in the distance. There is a park not far from here. One can see people walking their dogs, picnicking or bicycling happily. I can even hear the laughter of children as they run through the park with their parents chasing after them. How beautiful, I think, would it be to stroll in a park, saunter down to a babbling brook up in the hills, or eat peacefully without the fear of violence. I know it's just a matter of a brief time until my life comes to an end. I've lived this nightmare existence longer than I expected. When I first arrived, other inmates told me I probably wouldn't last a month. But I have seen many come and go, to a fate unknown. It would be all too easy to give up all hope. But when all seems lost, one still has the right to dream. That is something they can never take away from us. My dream is to live long enough to see an end to this incarceration and torture, and perhaps even get home to my family, if they still exist. There doesn't seem to be any hope of escape. The camp is too cleverly constructed for that. In fact, in some inmates, there seems to be almost a sense of resignation and acceptance of their tragic existence. I believe they call that Stockholm Syndrome. Generally, our captors do not engage us in conversation or ask us anything. They usually just walk by as if we don't exist. When we moo, they don't seem to understand what we are saying. I suspect they would at least try to communicate with us if we were human beings rather than cows. But today, uncharacteristically, one of my captors stopped at my cage to chat with me. He was one of the youngest of the men and sounded sensitive and caring, as strange as that may seem. But what he said really confused me. He mentioned that he doesn't eat meat and that he doesn't agree with the use of animals for food. I really didn't understand what he meant by that. After all, what is meat? The Bruja and the Brujo Clay was driving west on I-270 towards St. Louis. The radio was off. He was alone with his thoughts. His father had died 2 days ago, and he was on his way from Chicago to the services, trying to reconcile his feelings on the road. He loved his father, but the old man was very difficult at times. He didn't really view Clay as his son. He viewed him as his private property, to do with as he wished. It was always football practice, baseball games, wrestling meets, karate lessons, and more. Sometimes Clay just wanted to hang out with his friends and play some video games, but there was rarely much time for that. His father spent 22 years in the U.S. Marine Corps. The red light behind the gas gauge lit up. He meant to stop and fuel up an hour ago, but he was lost in thought. Now he was in the middle of nowhere, and who knew where the closest gas station might be? Hopefully something would come up soon. He stopped thinking about his father as this practical concern overrode all else until it was resolved. He saw an exit sign ahead, Snaretown Road. Some little burg out here in the sticks, but there was a faded blue sign showing the standard highway gas station symbol. He exhaled and took the exit. At the end of the off-ramp, he saw nothing but empty road running off to the left, but to his right, he could see what looked like a small village about a mile down the road. He turned in that direction. When he reached it, he realized that you couldn't really call it a village. It consisted of just 3 blocks of commercial space. Most locations were unoccupied, he noticed, with a small grid of houses just behind on either side of the road. There couldn't be more than a few hundred people living there in total. He saw the gas station up ahead on the right and pulled in. Fuck. The gas station was closed, yellow tape around all of the pumps. It looked like it had been closed for years. Why didn't they take that sign down on the highway exit? He didn't know if he could make it to the next gas station, wherever that was, with what was left in the tank. There was a convenience market attached to the gas station, and the lights were off inside. But the door opened, and two men came out. They were somewhere in their 50s, or maybe earlier 60s, and they were dressed alike in thick plaid shirts, denim jeans, and brown boots. They waved to Clay and approached his car with friendly smiles. Clay rolled down his window. "Hey there, what can we do you for?" Was there a nervous cast to their smiles? "I just pulled off I-270 for gas, but it looks like I'm out of luck here. Do you know where I can find the closest station?" The two men began responding at the same time, but then one deferred to the other. "Yes, sir. You want to just turn right back around the way you came, and if you continue west on the 270, you'll see an exit for, Williams Village Road, just a few miles down, and they've got a couple of stations there. Good luck to you now." They just stared at him awkwardly, and Clay thanked them and pulled out of the gas station back towards the highway, praying he could make it to Williams Village Road. The needle was right on E. He didn't remember the drive from the highway exit to that little village being so far, but he could not even see the interstate from where he was. He also didn't pass through any other towns or villages when he turned off onto Snaretown Road, but now he saw one up ahead. Just a little 3-block main street surrounded by some homes. When he arrived there, he saw the same vacant gas station with the yellow tape around the pumps, the place he just drove away from less than 5 minutes earlier. He tapped the brakes, and when he saw the two men standing there in their plaid shirts, he pulled in again and rolled down his window. The nervous smiles were gone. Now they just looked nervous, their faces somewhat ashen. The one who had provided the directions to Williams Village Road spoke up. "Hey there, partner. Did you get turned around or something?" He looked around. Clay had a very strange feeling in his gut. Not a good feeling. "I don't think so. I headed right back down this road towards the highway. I don't know how it could have possibly happened." The two men looked at each other briefly. "Well, there's a sneaky turnoff down there that basically loops you back around to here. I'm sure that's what probably happened. You wouldn't be the first. Tell you what, why don't you just make a right turn out of here and stay straight on this road until you reach the 270, and then you just hop on the westbound ramp. You'll be down there at Williams Village Road in no time." After a moment, he nervously added, "Go on now. Good luck." He looked around, and Clay thanked him and followed the directions, which were entirely uncomplicated. Once again, he followed the road back to the interstate, and once again, he drove for a few minutes and arrived back in that same small town with the defunct old gas station. The two men in plaid shirts were still standing there by the pumps, staring in his direction. Clay tapped the brakes and pulled in. This time, he killed the engine and stepped out. "Guys, what's going on here?" They stared at each other with grave expressions for a moment, and the one who had done all the talking so far continued to do so. He crossed his arms over his chest and looked down at the pavement. "Well, fella, I'm afraid we have some bad news for you. And you're not going to believe it when I tell it to you now. But eventually, I'm afraid you will know that it's all true." He paused and took a deep breath. Clay's heart started beating harder. The man pointed up to some low wooded hills just beyond the patchwork of homes that made up the little village. "So, for as long as anyone around here can remember, there has been an old house up there in them woods that was home to an old woman and an old man. They came here from somewhere just outside of Mexico City many years ago. They lived way down in Chiapas before that. Old as they were, they lived on as other folks born. Well, after them lived long lives and passed away. The old woman and the old man just kept carrying on. They didn't come down to the village here often, but when they did come down, they always looked a little older. But somehow they were still carrying on. He paused and looked at his partner in plaid. "Charlie, you want to take over here? You can probably tell it better than I can." The other man cleared his throat. "Yeah, sure." So, as Marty was just saying, the old woman and the old man who lived in that old ramshackle house up there in the hills didn't come down here to the village too often. They didn't have to. Now, here's where you're gonna stop believing any of this. But it's true. They didn't have to come down here to the village because if they needed anything, they had a pair of twin gray wolves, and they would just send them down. Those two would get whatever they needed. They would just walk into a store, pull the items that were needed off the shelves, and then growl viciously at someone in the store. They didn't care who, until they packed up all those items and followed those wolves back to the old house up there in the hills. Charlie paused to gauge Clay's reaction to this. Normally, Clay would dismiss this sort of fairy tale stuff instantly, but his head was still spinning from what had just happened when he tried to drive back to the interstate, so he continued to listen, wondering where this was all going. Well, sometimes the old woman and the old man did come down to the village. When the weather was nice and when the 4th of July fireworks were in flight, they were sometimes seen walking slowly together, hand in hand. The locals who lived here for a while all called them the Bruja, her, and the Brujo, him. I don't know how that started. It's just what people called them. Maybe they introduced themselves that way at some time. Anyway, one long summer day many years ago, no one can say just how many, they came down into the village. They were walking slowly down this sidewalk right here when some drunk driver came off the interstate in a big old SUV looking for gas and more beer, and he swerved just enough to run the Bruja down. She was killed instantly, and the Brujo screamed in fury as the man exited his vehicle. Mere moments later, the twin wolves were there, and they had him surrounded, snarling with rage and snapping their teeth at him. The Brujo pointed down at the old woman, and without saying a word, the driver lifted her body and followed the old man back up to the old ramshackle house in the hills, the two wolves trailing behind. He paused there and raised his eyebrows, giving Clay a chance to ask any questions or express his disbelief. Clay just stared back at him, waiting to hear the rest of the tale. Charlie continued, "Well, that's when things changed around here for good. For starters, all of the usual deliveries that we received every week, food, gas, prescription drugs, retail products like clothing and shoes and such, just all stopped coming one day. That was the day that we woke up and found that drunk driver crucified by the side of the road just down there. He had a sign hung around his neck that read, 'Do not touch me,' and no one was brave enough to defy that warning. He stayed up there for almost a year, the crows picking the flesh off his bones. And then one day, there was a storm, and the crucifix was blown down. You can still see the remains of his bones in the tall grass over there. Anyway, after that, no one could leave. There were 188 people living here at that time. Any time that any one of us attempted to drive down towards the interstate and away from Snaretown Road, we ended up right back here, just like you did. Outsiders like you have turned up here over the years, and most of the time they were able to leave. But some, like you, found themselves unable to leave. No one knows why, but I assure you, it is real. You're with us now. I'm sure you seriously doubt all of this, but Someday, you will be buried here. Marty nodded, and Charlie paused again. And this time, Clay was done listening to the story. He walked back to the car door. Look, I don't know what kind of scam or joke you're trying to pull here, but I think I've heard enough. I'm leaving now. See you soon, Marty said quietly and waved goodbye. He did not smile. About 5 minutes later, Clay pulled into the gas station again from the opposite direction. Marty and Charlie were still standing right where they were when he left. He put the car in park and rested his forehead on the steering wheel for a short time. Then he exited the vehicle. All right, what the hell is going on here? Charlie just told you. Clay lifted his chin. Okay, well, if there are no supplies coming into town, how do you all survive? What do you eat? Charlie said, come with me, and walked back into the convenience market. It was mostly empty, with the exception of a few chairs and a fold-out table with a deck of cards on top. There was also a cold case, which was almost completely empty, and one of those large freezer chests that most people keep in their basement or garage. Charlie lifted the lid. It was empty. Every morning, me and Marty come down here at 8 o'clock and we check the case. Sometimes there's enough food for everyone. Sometimes there's only half that. On some days, there's just nothing at all. It's almost always frozen dinners and canned goods, but sometimes we find a bag of apples or oranges. And when someone here in town is sick, we will occasionally find a bag of prescription medications. Not always. One day there was a chainsaw, and that afternoon we got hit by a nasty tornado that knocked trees down all around. Knocked down some power lines too, but the power stayed on anyway. We lost our phone lines, cellular signal, and internet connections when it all started, but for some reason the lights have stayed on and the plumbing still works. We just can't reach the outside world. No one knows why, and no one is willing to speak with the Brujo about it. He almost never comes down to the village anymore. When he does, he is always flanked by those two gray wolves. Clay tried to process all of it. The initial instinct of his rational mind was to call bullshit on the whole thing. But he also knew what had just happened each time he attempted to leave the village. He needed air. He stepped outside and leaned against the fender of his car, parked by the dead gas pumps. Charlie and Marty stayed inside and spoke to one another for a little while, and then they walked out and rejoined Clay. I'm sorry, partner. I didn't catch your name. Clay introduced himself. Well, Clay, we have lost many of our older neighbors over the years, and not too many new ones have arrived to replace them. The last one before you was Jimmy Gillis from Kansas City, and that was over 4 years ago. As a result, we have quite a few unoccupied houses where we can set you up. Charlie looked at Marty and said, I'm thinking Benny McCabe's place would do nicely. It's small, but he and his brother did a lot of remodeling work before it all started, and it's still in very good shape. Marty nodded. Sure. Come on, Clay. It's just down the block here. You can leave your car there for now. It will be fine. Not that you'll ever need it again. Neither of the older men chuckled at this. It was not intended to be a joke. Clay was just trying to make sense of it all as he followed them down the block to the house. He definitely hadn't given up hope of leaving here as soon as possible, but he didn't have a plan. He needed time to think. The house would give him some time to do this on his own. Charlie and Marty showed Clay around the single-story, two-bedroom home. It was nice enough. And afterwards, they walked around the little village for a while and introduced him to some of his new neighbors. Everyone was nice, but everyone was also just off in one way or another. They all seemed a bit haunted, a bit broken, and that was right there on the surface. You couldn't miss it. Afterwards, Clay pulled his car down the block and parked it in front of his temporary new residence. He pulled his suitcase from the trunk and brought it inside. Marty came by with a frozen pizza and 2 cans of soda for his dinner. That night, lying in bed, Clay never even came close to finding sleep. He stared up into the darkness and contemplated his situation, his reality. The more he thought about it, the less he believed it. He was educated and not given to belief in the supernatural. This had to be some kind of trick or illusion. He couldn't understand the purpose, but he didn't want to find out too late that he had been trapped into some weird sacrificial cult or something like that. As the hours went by, he became more and more sure of his conviction that this was not real. He thought about the half-mad people he had met while walking the neighborhood with Charlie and Marty that evening. He had no desire to remain here another second. There had to be a way out. And this story about the Bruja and the Brujo, it was all just too much to accept. This was crazy. He had to be at his father's funeral. He had to get there somehow. He decided to leave. He got up and packed his things back into the suitcase and walked out to the front door. When he opened it, a pair of very large twin gray wolves sat there on the porch, perfectly still except for their yellow eyes. He recoiled instinctively and took a step back. The wolves let out a low growl simultaneously, but remained still. Clay slowly shut the front door to his new home and went back to bed. He would not be at his father's funeral. He knew that now. He wasn't going anywhere. Ari. The heat, death of the sun. Reality was having a Monday with a capital M. Never mind that it was Thursday, or that Monday always began with a capitalized M, or that both Mondays and Thursdays only existed on Earth. That was all beside the point. Ron liked that about Earth, though, the calendars. Really, humans had something special going on with them. They were great with organizational skills, and he appreciated that, given his role as manager of accounts payable. He was just one cog in the existence machine, but lately Ron felt he might be the only one to really give a hoot about the overall health of the industry. The atmosphere of the Division of Material Validity office was drab, sure, but he found his job of keeping existence running to be interesting. There were an infinite amount of vendors that manufactured the various components of reality, and he enjoyed his role of ensuring that those accounts all got paid for their hard work. Ron's day started off fine enough. His boss, Mike, prattled through the morning meeting with his usual ennui before giving him a checklist of urgent tasks. Ron spent his pre-lunch hours ticking off boxes. Pay the universe's monthly time invoice to keep months a thing. Contact maintenance overdue space-time fabric repair on collapsing wormholes in Sector 12. B. Review discrepancy in inertia. Report on galactic planetary rotation. Forward any Earth RFPs titled, "Oh God, please save us," or similar to upper management. He got through the first 2 in record time, considering he paid time ahead of schedule, but the Monday-ish nature of the Thursday kicked into high gear as he scrolled through an inbox full of dismally titled RFPs. He'd always thought the DMV overpaid realities freelancers, so he was perplexed as to why there seemed to be so many slackers recently. Humans weren't the only ones having issues. The fluxers on Zemulus 237 were freaking out about Zemulus 237 suddenly rotating backwards, but given their sheer amount of messages, humans were definitely making the biggest fuss. He'd been scrolling for the past 15 minutes, and he still hadn't reached the end of this morning's RFPs to the Savior Department alone. Ron glanced across the aisle at Florence's cubicle and saw that she wore a similarly exasperated expression as she looked through them all. It would seem that endless earthen pleas to the heavens were clogging up everyone's inboxes. Ron, frankly, was at his wit's end. He dialed Mike's office phone extension. Why is Earth spewing out so many salvation proposals all of the sudden? Sun's getting too big and hot. They're having a rough go of things. Ron blinked and scrubbed at his forehead. That's odd. I paid Fusion's invoice. I know. They got upper-level orders to churn out more energy, though. Kicked it up yesterday. He sank back into his office chair and rolled his eyes to the ceiling. And upper management didn't communicate that with the rest of us because... Mike snorted. It was just a little tweak to Fusion's workload, not a big issue in the overall grand scheme of things. Ron sighed. Okay, thanks. Forwarding now. Yep. He set the phone back on the receiver and began forwarding messages up the chain of command, but paused at one rather offensive title. He read the message, feeling a bit nosy as he did so. From Alice Kincaid at earth.universe.2, all at dmv.universe. Subject, RFP. We're dying down here, asshole. Hey, God. CNN just announced we have about 6 months before we're cooked. The sun's getting hotter by the day. I can't go outside anymore. I thought we had like a billion-ish years left. At least, that's what the Science Museum exhibit said when I went as a kid. Scared the hell out of me. Always has. But a billion years is a damn long time. 6 months is absolutely not. I would love it if you could make the sun go back to normal. I haven't done everything I wanted to do yet. Please, it's too hot. It hurts. My skin is... Please. More sincerely than I've ever been about anything. Ever. Alice Kincaid. Scowling, Ron called Deity. The line rang for a few long moments, but he was pleasantly surprised when the CEO answered. Hello? Hi, Dee. How's it going? Hey, man. Same old. What's up? I just had a question about Salvation RFPS. Ron could hear Deity typing something as he responded blandly, Shoot. Are you guys doing anything about them? I've forwarded several to you and the board, but they just keep coming. I was going to mark them as spam and wanted to check if you're receiving them without me forwarding. Yeah, spam them. Got it. Ron considered whether it was professional to ask further questions, but his curiosity outweighed his propriety. Are you going to respond to them? Take any of Earth's projects on, I mean? Deity laughed in an offhand way. Nah, I'm phasing out the planet. Humans are too destructive. Tarsonis's Jebulons have their act together a lot better, so the board voted to sell off Earth and invest over there instead. It's a stabler market. He felt a hot stab of dismay at the news and swallowed thickly. Understandable, but can I say? He gave a little laugh. I mean, I know it's way above my pay grade, but... Ron chose his words carefully as he said, humans have been our top client for a few 100,000 years. They've had some centuries of poor performance every now and then, sure, but we've always kept an overall mutually beneficial relationship. It's unfortunate we're ending it on a bad note. Deity clicked his tongue. Speak more freely, Ron. I don't mind hearing your opinion. Ron huffed a chuckle. Don't write them off our books. I like what they put out. Would be a shame to not be able to get their stuff anymore. What sort of stuff? Ron thought for a moment. Well, I enjoy all the love stories. They've got some great food, too. I tried a sandwich once. Phenomenal. And I owe them a debt for coming up with calendars. Deity deliberated silently before replying. Jebulans just created a far superior timekeeping system, and it didn't take them almost 300,000 years to do it. Switch to using theirs. The market's moving on, Ron. Progress with it. I appreciate your input, though. Tell you what, I'll bring up your notes to the board at the next meeting. We may be able to work something out. Ron's shoulders relaxed. Thanks, Dee. Appreciate it. Yep. Have a good one. The line went dead. Ron turned his attention back to Alice's message, his cursor hovering over the mark as spam button. He decided to archive it instead. Ron brooded the entire commute home and concluded that he found the DMV's culture and overall philanthropic approach to be increasingly lackluster. Phasing out Earth was a bad move, plain and simple. He didn't understand the decision, even after hearing Deity's explanation. Jebulans had exited the primitive stage of existence far quicker than humans had. True, but their demeanor was overzealous. The DMV's mailroom was constantly overwhelmed with fanatic offerings, and their adoration always felt just a tad too desperate to be authentic. Humans showed their appreciation for reality in subtler ways. They were intentional with it, more honest. A message of gratitude at receiving a tight embrace from a missed loved one. A whispered, "I owe you" when swimming through crystal water. A salute when a sore knot is worked out of a long, aching muscle. Deity was a great guy, a fantastic CEO, but he had a distinct flair for the dramatic that often left Ron dealing with a nightmare at the office. For instance, around 6,000 years ago, Deity hedged a bet that chemistry wouldn't be able to synthesize enough water for Q3 on their current budget, so he'd ordered Ron to increase their payment. Mike had warned the CEO that doing so would generate far more water than could be tolerated by planets with life forms. But Deity had simply responded that those life forms were underperforming. He'd ordered that a handful of profitable creatures be retained for improved reproduction, and the task fell to Ron to proceed with the higher payment. To this day, Ron felt terrible about flooding every planet across 4 galaxies. He settled into his nightly routine, but he couldn't get Alice's message out of his mind. He pulled up the archived message as he ate his supper. After a stiff drink, he forwarded the correspondence to his personal account, then forwarded it to Alice again with an attached reply. From Ron at personal.universe.2, Alice Kincaid at earth.universe.subject. FW. FW. RFP. We're dying down here, asshole. Hello, Alice. Strictly speaking, it goes against protocol for me to send this message, and you are the first life form to receive such a communication from me, so my apologies for any disruption to your evening. Admittedly, I'm unsure how this message might be received by a human. The purpose of this correspondence is to extend my sincere condolences for your current situation and assure you that your concerns regarding your imminent demise will be thoroughly discussed at the next meeting of our board. Please note, however, that this does not guarantee immediate action. We appreciate your patience during this time. All the best, Ron. Manager, Accounts Payable, Division of Material Validity. Ron sipped on his second drink, feeling a bit more at ease with the situation. His satisfaction dissipated when she returned a response in seconds. From Alice Kincaid at Earth.universe.2. Ron at personal.universe. Subject: indistinct shriek of terror. I apologize, but I need Japanese text to perform the conversion as requested. If you'd like me to demonstrate this capability, please provide Japanese text that includes kanji characters, and I'll convert it according to the guidelines. Ron set down his glass and frowned as he replied. From Ron at personal.universe.2, Alice Kincaid at Earth.universe. Subject, indistinct shriek of terror. Hello, Alice. Your quick response is appreciated, but I am confused as to your meaning. Best, Ron. Alice's reply was instantaneous. From Alice Kincaid at earth.universe.2. Ron at personal.universe. Subject, indistinct shriek of terror. Get out of my head. Get out. Get out. Are you reading a bloody email? God, it hurts. It hurts. Ron winced, pulled out his phone, and found Alice's alternate contact in the DMV database. He dialed the number for a video call. The image of a hyperventilating woman curled into the fetal position on a dirty floor appeared on the screen. She was covered in patches of charred skin, and her hair was matted with blood in some places. Ah, hello. This is Ron. Please forgive me for calling you at this hour, and for the pain you experienced receiving my initial messages. I wasn't aware my previous form of communication would be painful for a human. She let out a shriek upon seeing him appear in what looked to be her kitchen. Her hands tore at her hair as she mumbled incoherently. Are you all right? It wasn't my intention to startle you. Alice shot to her feet and tugged a large chopping knife from its holder, brandishing it in his face. What are you? Ron's brow furrowed. He'd always assumed humans would recognize a DMV agent, considering all the mail they sent. As I said in my earlier message, I'm the... What the hell? Manager of accounts payable at the DMV, he continued as she panted a string of vile curses. I read your RFP meant for the Savior Department, and I felt just awful about what's happening to your son. I thought I'd give you an update personally, maybe alleviate your fears a bit. Her subsequent screech was nearly unintelligible, but Ron deduced through the wailed expletives that she was confused about the nature of the DMV. Please, miss, calm yourself. I'm not technically in the room with you. Alice's eyes bulged, but she stilled, and the knife clattered against the tile floor. The division is quite hard to explain to a life form on your plane of existence, but the short answer is that we manage and regulate that plane. She jabbed a finger in his direction. So you're the one responsible for making the sun about to explode? Ron's teeth tugged at his bottom lip. It's a bit more complicated than that. He lost the battle against his better judgment and gave the terrified woman a simplified explanation of Deity's decision. When he finished, she sank to the floor in a heap and put her filthy head in her hands. It will be all right. The board will... Alice breathed a raw laugh. Ron looked at her with concern as the sound grew in broken intensity. Miss... Angels, she choked out between gasping fits of laughter. And God and reality itself are all just a bunch of corporate goons, and I'm nothing more than an underwhelming employee, and... Her laughter morphed into weeping. Oh, that is cruel. She was an underwhelming client, technically, but Ron didn't correct her. Is there anything more I can do to help you at the moment? He cringed at the utter devastation on the woman's face as she turned to nod at him. She was silent for a long moment, staring blankly at the heat-yellowed paint of the wall, before she muttered, "Take me back to that museum all those years ago, so I can tell my 10-year-old self to write a lot of books, to read a lot more of them, to learn the guitar, to become a rock star like I always wanted, or maybe an author." Her voice broke as she slowly stood back up. To hurry up and find the love of my life, because I've spent it entirely alone, to quit my soul-sucking office job, or to not even take it in the first place, to hug my mom long and hard every chance I get, to tell my dad I forgive him, to make peace right then and there with how insignificant I am, because I am. Ron ground his teeth at the volume of her final sentence, shocked at how viscerally uncomfortable the word insignificant made him feel. I'll be sure to speak to Deity tomorrow at... Alice threw the knife with all her strength at his projection, ending the call. I'm sorry, Ron. I am. But there's nothing I can do. We don't undo what's already been done. Chris, the head honcho over at Time, was being irksomely dense. Ron grumbled, gesticulating at the big machine before them. I know that. Nothing needs to be undone, just done over again. Run Earth's clock backward a bit, only 20 years. Come on, I'll owe you one. Memories on board. They already primed the woman. We're just waiting on you. Chris ran a hand through his silvering hair. Deity approved this? Not, as such. Sure did. For one human woman? Consider it an experiment. You've ran back time before, for far duller reasons. I don't know if I'd consider what we needed done with that woman in the Chaplin film to be... Ron waved a dismissive hand. Chris, seriously? The Time boss rolled his eyes. Fine. Who, when, and where am I sending her? Ron explained Alice's plight, and Chris pushed various buttons on the machine. Just send back her present consciousness into her childhood self. That's it. You do realize that this might kill the woman. We've never reversed memory back into time before. He shrugged and scratched his nose, looking at a sleeping Alice on the screen in front of them. It's an experiment. Chris nodded, then cranked a few more dials. Adult Alice didn't move, but the child Alice on the adjacent screen. Ron cringed as the child screamed and screamed and screamed. Chris sucked in air through his teeth. Child Alice drew frightened looks from the other Science Museum patrons, until finally being subdued by her mother. Ron scratched his temple, chewed the inside of his cheek. The girl screeched, over and over again in her mother's arms. What's the point? Chris shut the machine off, locking adult Alice into her child body forever, or at least until the sun exploded. He clapped Ron on the shoulder. Call that a success? Ron was silent for a beat, then muttered, Seems like the quick death of the sun might be preferable to the existential crisis brought on by simply thinking about the slow death of it. Think she'll appreciate her life more? This time around? Dunno. Sun's still going to explode on schedule. Board's not budging on it. He sighed. No one will remember her in the end, even if she does make something out of her life. Or maybe they will for a little while, now that she can change some things. That's all most of us can hope for, really. To not be insignificant. To do something important with our lives. He shot a triumphant smile at Chris, feeling overall very pleased with himself. At least he was able to do this. Change this small thing to help such a lovely planet. Chris shot him a confused look. Oh no, she can't change anything, man. She did all this screaming the first time around when she learned the sun was going to explode in 1 billion years too. I told you, nothing can be undone, but she will be able to watch it happen all over again with her adult memories and reasoning. Maybe she'll just learn to be grateful. Humans struggle with that. If you asked me, that's why Deity's blowing him up. Ron paled, his grin evaporating. The Time boss stretched his arms and cracked his back, and didn't notice the color drain from Ron's face. Anyway, let's get lunch. You're buying Bob Barker and the price of cookies. If Bob Barker was dead, he apparently was making the most of it. Bev checked the date on the magazine. guessing this bundle of BLTNs had gathered dust on some post office loading dock until some chuckle-headed awoke from their civil service coma. November 2024. She angrily brushed the white hair from her eyes as the early November winds buffeted the mailbox bank, then located the mailing label that cheapened the high-tone, heavy matte cover. Bev's old stylist had been a pretentious little bee with a stack of thick, chic, hoity town and countries in the waiting area, hoping to attract a classier clientele to her shitty little dump of a shop next to the campus Domino's that smelled perpetually of pepperoni and perms. Upshot was, somebody was going to have to get their hot goss at the Gas End Gulp or the Great Clips like a normal peon this month. Thanks. Beverly L. Tryon, 107 Oakline Drive, Millington, Illinois. Bev blinked and re-examined the other two cover boys. She was pretty sure Jimmy Buffett had sailed off into the sunset not too far back. Her hairball ex would have held a 3-day wake for the man if he hadn't already cracked his parrot head 3 Februaries back on his way from the VFW to the Moose after the last of the vets cut him off. The Legion already had turned off the spigot, and Lend canned the VA shrink halfway into intake, opting instead for his former wife's counsel to grow a set and just get over yourself. The third didn't ring a bell with Bev. Dimly familiar old black guy who sported at least a 5-pack, and who might have been handsome if, well, you know. Whoever he was jamming out on some unnaturally white beach with the purportedly late Price is Right host and the patron saint of every midlife mess who'd ever dropped the mortgage on a PT Cruiser. By the way, apparently not J.D. Power's top pick for surviving a collision with anything much larger than a pop-top. She read on. Come on down. The 3Bs rock their second anniversary with Rita's and Rhythm in Paradise. Bob Barker raises the curtain on his mega canine rescue and personal crusade against poverty, while Jimmy Buffett and Harry Belafonte share their greatest hit island recipes, including the greatest cheeseburger this side of paradise. Bev frowned as a dead maple cottonwood cyclone teased her varicose ankles. She didn't care for Bob's new tarnished silver mane, and the alto sax was certainly a new one on her. Buffett wailed on his Martin guitar, part of a treasury of parrot head trivia she'd inherited along with the deed to a charred cube of Cruiser. Belafonte, she now recalled from the piece-of-shit Beetlejuice movie her daughter had dragged her to after the divorce. Only good part of the idiotic, blasphemous thing, though now she recalled that when he wasn't slapping the bongos, Harry was a major troublemaker, one of those. I thought he was dead. Bev heard her own cervical pop as she whipped irritably around to find 109 craning over her shoulder. Though she'd ascertained ownership, Bev hugged the slippery magazine protectively to her chest. If I could just... The maddeningly tall old busybody next door mumbled as she attempted to reach around Bev's compact girth. Bev leapt back, and the amazing 6-foot woman scooped an impossible stack of catalogs and political flyers from inside her narrow Ace Hardware box. Bev suspected she was a libtard. She kept a patch of weeds and hay between their houses with a sign about how she was a friend of the butterflies. The city wouldn't do anything about it. Must be some kind of marketing campaign, 109 chirped, extracting her own sleek BLTN from the pile. What do you think that stands for? Probably like AARP, but I got that Saturday. Huh, addressed to me. Weird. Maybe the O people sold my name to a mailing list. Bev's jaw tightened. Her neighbor tapped her ET forefinger on the mailing label. See that in the corner? 1/7. 7 freebies to lure us in, then the sales pitch. God, I thought Belafonte was dead. You know, my mom actually met him during one of Dr. King's marches. I'm freezing my ass off. Later, Bev grunted, scuttling across the street, narrowly averting a Domino's driver who apparently thought 30 minutes or it's free was a personal code rather than a desperate marketing plea. The card floated to the olive shag as she slammed the front door shut against 109 and the others, those who'd wormed into the downtown fringe with their hippie gardens and rainbow flags and black Antifa Lives Matter and socialist blue yard signs as her neighbors cashed in one by one. Steadying herself on the doorframe, Bev bent painfully to scrape the cream-colored card from the filth and fibers. This subscription is a very special gift from Aileen. We hope you'll enjoy our thoughtfully curated articles, Bev snorted, and that truly BLTN enriches your understanding and perhaps even your life. With love, Aileen. Christ, Bev breathed, dropping into the threadbare Thomas recliner Len had neglected to include in the prenup. Aileen. There was a cousin Eileen on Dad's side, and two Count-em Ellens, one a little cunt on the Millington High cheer squad who'd made her senior year a nightmare, the other a bigger cunt of a cousin on Len's roster who she hadn't seen since her ex's 40th. Bev studied the 4x6, logo-embossed card. She realized the signature was handwritten. That itself seemed hinky. The magazine had slipped between cushion and arm, and Bev cursed as she worked it free and flipped open the stiff cover. Barker stood, arms crossed, in an improbably green field under an impossibly blue sky, surrounded by seemingly thousands of people each holding a dog. Every color and size, humans and canines, and breeds Bev had never seen in her 30-mile radius of a life, or that show with that scrawny little Mexican Cesar Milano whatever, all dogs go to heaven, but Bob Barker wants all transcendence to have a forever home too. See page 10. As Bev polished off her Marie Callender's meal to share Italiano meat lasagna with a dessert combo of Barker and Buffett, she was certain she'd been scammed on some elaborate and epic level. The old bait and switch, Len would have called it, probably. What was the phrase? Catfishing her for her discovery card information, or social security. Bev's old pal, Wikipedia, had confirmed Barker had died in August 2023, 1 cent short of 100 of the Alzheimer's. Unless they'd discovered some miracle cure for dementia and rigor mortis, Bev suspected somebody with a computer had deep-faked up the entire photo spread like they had at the Capitol back in 2021. Buffett had nibbled his last sponge cake about a month after Barker had cashed in, and Belafonte's tickered kicked out in April the same year. Bev read on, forsaking NCIS and then NCIS and so on, to peruse Kirstie Alley and Olivia Newton-John's favorite John Travolta films, Not What You'd Think, Latino Hura Lady's new stage production of something called A Raisin in the Sun, and a selection of Tom Clancy's latest poetry. The new Harper Lee and Raymond Chandler novels were coming out, and Roger Ebert reviewed Robin Williams' upcoming comedy. Throughout were more references to transcendence, something called shepherding that appeared to be some kind of Big Brothers, Big Sisters deal for adults, and other weirdo jargon with a Scientology-type vibe. By 10:30, Bev had bypassed the crossword for a last-page nightcap called BLTN Bites. At first, she recognized none of the 8 mugshots lined up along the bottom of the inside back page, and she fumbled her Walgreens cheaters on to see just what this shit was all about. I'd sacrificed my creativity for what I thought were family responsibilities when I actually had surrendered what I loved for family expectations. Now, I sacrifice nothing. Tina H. Shepherding has opened the doors that kept me in darkness as a husband and father. Sergio F. As I help heal tortured and guilty souls, the cries of the camps finally have begun to fade. Gerhard W. I'd tried to treat my wartime nightmares with liquor and marriage, except I was only chasing poison with poison and a toxic relationship. Leonard T. Bev paused at that last, scrutinized the accompanying thumbnail, a beaming, tanned, mustached man who appeared to have lost a good 40 pounds and a network of broken capillaries. Len seemed to be smiling up at her, not in contempt but with an infuriatingly pitying joy. Bev frisbeed the magazine across the living room. The second edition was in the mailbox Friday, slumming with the Miles Kimball / Harriet Carter catalogs and Subway and Arby's coupons. Doris Day, Grace Kelly, Janet Leigh, and big-boobed Kim Novak adorned the cover this time, sharing a jumbo bucket of popcorn under a theater screen filled with a doughy, inscrutable face. "We too!" the blood-red headline screamed. Hitchcock's blondes talk Weinstein, micro and macro aggressions, and traps and tips for tomorrow's Hollywood to-be-eyes. Bev's faintly glaucomic eyes did a full loop as she wondered what in the fuck a to-be was, and she turned from the trio of mailboxes before glancing about the dead, gray block and sneaking a peek inside 109. Beef and cheese and teriyaki chicken, Harry and David and Land's End catalogs, and 109's own copy of BLTN. Bev started toward 108's box, but a chipper voice shattered the frigid November air, and she tasted copper. "We have to quit meeting like this," 109 murmured, with a theatrically arched eyebrow, towering entirely too closely. "Oh, it's here. I was hoping. This would have been perfect for Thursday chemo." The WNBA's eldest draft pick looked more Panera's or Whole Foods than Arby's or Subway, pale and knobby and the color of chicken skin. "Shoot, I was hoping maybe you'd want mine," Bev lied, waving the glossy magazine. "You don't like it?" Uzdokas gasped. "I find it so affirming. You know everybody in there's dead, right?" "Everybody," Bev echoed. "Sick. I mean, what's the deal? Is this some kind of, what do they call it, cyber scam?" They don't have a website, I checked, so not really cyber. And if this is a scam, it's an awful expensive one, don't you think? Did you notice there are no ads, no information about subscribing? How do they pay for this whole production? You know what I think maybe this is about? Second chances, better choices, leaving regrets behind. You know what performance art is, right? I think maybe this is like performance journalism. Bev remembered how good fucking Len looked, considering his past stint as 240 pounds of flame-broiled road chuck. "I think you're batshit crazy," she snapped, struggling across the street with her slippery bundle with as much dignity as she could attempt to muster. Back in the cost-efficient, 60-degree comfort of her living room, Bev ripped through the December BLTN, scanning the names and faces of the dead. Cronkite, Winehouse, Plath, Walters, Shakur, Bogart, Cobain, Dr. King, Mr. Spock, the famous dead Kennedys building homes with Eisenhower, Johnson, Nixon, and a lanky and badly styled goateed fellow who, if Mrs. Werschnick's fifth-grade history served her, had taken one in the balcony 40 and some odd more ago. This time, Bev snatched the card mid-flight, a gift from Aileen. Just between us. Aileen. The tone was indefinable, the silence that followed arctic. Bev stumbled backward against the recliner's arm. "Nat, do you know any Aileen? Wasn't there an aunt on your dad's side?" "You never listened." Bev's daughter sounded a decade older, though it had been a little less than 3 years since they'd last exchanged a spoken word. "What?" "You never listened. You couldn't hear anything through your anger and hate. You wouldn't hear anything." God Natalie's voice broke into harsh, strained sobs. "The hell are you babbling about?" Bev snapped even as her fingers trembled around the smartphone. Of course, it was us too. We wouldn't hear it. Him. Her. Oh, fuck. We thought we were the victims. We were the ones in pain. But you. Fucking you. Bev was now holding the phone in both hands, perched on the Thomas's arm as if suspended over infinite space. I'm not sitting here while you fucking cuss me out. You called me, Nat shrieked, gasping and now laughing murderously. After all this time, you called me to remind me what a poisonous, soulless, hateful old cunt you are. Well, her daughter panted. Well, I guess better late than never. Right? Right? The phone slipped from Bev's arthritic fingers as she fell back into the cushion, veined legs kicking, folded and trapped on her back like a tortoise wearing its carapace beneath the skin. Nat's unearthly rage and madness crackled somewhere in the deep green pile below, a blaze her mother was powerless to extinguish. Just between us. Before the evil took hold of him, it was their little joke. One more thumbprint cookie, an extra slice of Kroger cake or Baker's Square French silk before Mom scooped him up for supper. A reminiscence or chuckle her woke daughter would never have tolerated. We'll keep this our little secret, just between us. When Aiden finally confided in Grandma, he'd turned it against her, and she wasn't going to be extorted by a spoiled, sick 13-year-old. After it all began, after Aiden began spewing insanity, his vile inner thoughts and whinings, after the wheedling and fits and the pervert libtard shrink, and the constant trips to Chicago, and the financial realizations that threatened Paula's college, and the public displays and declarations, and finally the family's exile from holidays and even communications, the cookies and cake and the secrets had halted. When Bev herself banned the boy from her home, spitting his adopted pronouns back in his face, he'd called blubbering from one of his freak friends' phones to keep her from immediately ghosting him. He was alone. Dad would no longer speak to him. Mom had told him he was a selfish brat who'd made them outcasts. Aunt Nina told Mom, on speaker no less, that she couldn't have the girls exposed to such depravity, and the church in which Nat, Paula, and Aiden all had been christened had written to revoke God's blessing on the deity's behalf. Grandma, just between us, I kind of feel more and more like just killing myself. Bev also had received a Dear John, Luke, Matthew, Mark from the Second Millington Church of Jesus, though not from quite so far up the chain and merely punching her ticket to Tuesday night prayer and gossip and the coveted holiday potluck chairmanship. It had been months since Nat had so much as dropped her a check-in text, and the atmosphere at the Catholics' Thursday public bingo had dropped 20 or 30 degrees since Aiden's, parentally, unauthorized interview on the local AM morning show. Well, Bev had reflected, calmly, tonelessly, better late than never. Oh, of course, she couldn't blame herself. Like the literal drama queen Aiden had become demanding his true self, he didn't have, nor, as Bev had quipped, any longer had the stones to face the humiliation he'd brought down on his family, on his grandma. She had nothing to torture herself over. That was on the man with the swastika and Jesus tattoos who'd unloaded 7 slugs into the creature who was once her little guy in a Peoria LGBTQ health center lot to the tune of Genesis 1:27. Number it was the betrayal. Bev raged as she thrashed ineffectually to free herself from this final, posthumous revenge, the effort sending jolts of pain up her left arm. He'd broken their pact, the little bastard. Or bitch. Finally, a young feminine voice pierced the growing fog. Bev blinked up at a figure perhaps not as lovely as Aiden had been handsome, but somehow far stronger. Better late than never, I guess. Miss? She'd been halfway down 107's weedy walk when she turned beaming to the gaunt, middle-aged woman gripping the porch rail next door, as if she were awaiting the first life raft. The long, frail neighbor woman was smiling uncertainly back, apologetic concern in her deeply sunken eyes. "Hello," the girl greeted in a rather low but somehow comforting tone. Instead of holding her stance in annoyed indecision or briskly crossing the scrubby turf between them to expedite the encounter, the young woman continued down the walk and took the sidewalk to 109. On closer examination, she was what some might call homely, slender but big-boned, crisp blue eyes, set perhaps a centimeter too far apart for standard, conformist beauty. But she moved with what Kelly's own mother might have called bearing, a confidence in who and what she was, and that whatever that was just, well, right. The girl waited at the bottom of the steps, inviting, inquiring, neither expectant nor demanding. "I didn't mean to disrupt your day," Kelly said. "I thought I might have heard something from, Beverly's a minute ago, and I just wanted to know everything was all right." "It is," the young woman smiled brightly. "So you're not..." I'd understood she had a grandson. She did. "And please don't be sorry. I was coming to see you next. You've received your complimentary BLTN, Mrs. Grambling?" Kelly's head tilted before the smile returned. "Well, yes, though I'd have to say I'm at a bit of a loss as to what exactly it is I'm reading. Full disclosure, I'm in no position for long-term subscriptions." The girl looked to the sky with a grin. "I guess, if I had to say, we're about second chances, better choices, leaving all regrets behind. Options. I'm kinda out of those." Kelly sighed. "Mrs. Grambling, do you have a minute to discuss options?" "I guess I have that. And please, Kelly, Aileen, lifer." The parking lot was empty, except for dry weeds squeezing up through cracks in the asphalt, except for the deserted, rusting basketball hoop on one end, except for rustling leaves skittering across fading parking spaces in the gathering dusk, except for oil spots shimmering with rainbow colors after a recent sprinkling. The parking lot was empty. And because fate is resourceful, a steady, gloomy rain started falling, blurring any hope of discovering the mysterious body called in by an anonymous tip. "What's in the corner by that dilapidated chain-link fence?" my partner, Andy, asked. "Looks like piles of garbage bags being buried by soggy leaves from here," I answered. "I'll circle around for a closer look." "I detect movement. Do dead bodies move?" "Nah, just rats crawling all over." "Better get out and take a good look. Bummer the rain is getting worse, and the wind is picking up, turning this into a chilly, miserable autumn evening. Not even a sliver of a moon. Why is that always the way when a body shows up?" Andy complained. "Can't we simply call the coroner's office to come claim the neatly wrapped package?" "They would love that and have our badges if it turned out to be nothing more than trash. We gotta confirm whatever it is. Sorry. Get your slicker on and take your flashlight. I'll be ready to call it in." I pulled the squad car up as close as I could as he prepared to exit. Suddenly, lightning flashed. Thunder pealed as a hail of bullets pounded the passenger side. Andy fell back inside his head, exploding and pouring gray matter all over me and the upholstery. Reacting instinctively, I spun out of the lot, laying new rubber on the old asphalt and bumping over the crumbling center meridian, at the same time trying to figure from which gaping windows in the 4-story abandoned factory building the bullets were spewing, cursing under my breath. "F***ing prank call! How can this be happening?" Collecting my scrambled wits, I squealed a UI about half a block away, and paused on the side of the street looking back at the front of the building. Like rats abandoning a sinking ship, perps were scurrying out of doors carrying backpacks and rolled-up bedding. They appeared homeless, but any of them were potential suspects, and they were all getting away along with the weapons while I was on the horn to Central. Like a crazy man possessed, I ground into gear and plowed ahead, showering taser rays from my weapon, aiming at legs to slow them down. So what if I hit a few with my bumper? We would need witnesses. Officer down, send armored SWAT, was all I remember shouting into the mic. I sped out of retaliation range and waited for backup, not knowing if any would be available. All I wanted to do was hold what was left of my friend and partner. An 18-year veteran of the force, he was already looking forward to retiring and spending more time with his beautiful wife, Jolene, and his teenaged sons, Andrew Jr. and Joshua. I remember watching those boys grow up. How am I ever going to face them? As the senior officer, I'm the one who was supposed to be protecting him. Instead, I delivered him into a hail of bullets. We let our guard down, dear boy. I don't have anyone waiting at home for me. Why couldn't it have been me with a new hole in the head? It can't even be an opened casket. No mortician can put the pieces back together. Bleak rain continued to fall into the chill autumn night, highlighted by blue and red strobing lights and streaking lightning punctuated by thunder. By the time the captain and lieutenant got there, I know I looked like a blubbering idiot, shivering and quaking. More squads and a special weapons van soon arrived. Don't go in there without armor and shields. I think it was a deliberate ambush set up to kill as many police as they could. Got a fake tip about a body being found, but we were supposed to deliver the bodies. I'd say the bullets were coming from the second and third floor broken windows, but so many people scrambled out of the building, you may not find any evidence. Still, someone could be waiting to claim more victims. I put a few down out front. Gotta go find some more. Bet those defund the police activists are happy with this carnage. Force is already down to bare bones. Slim odds we'll be able to round up all them. Easy, Cooper. Look at yourself. You hit it all? You've done all you're going to do tonight. Lieutenant Kramer and I will handle it from here. Someone will assess how you're doing while we assess the situation, Captain Crane commanded. Soon, ambulances were on the scene with emergency medical technicians attending to those witnesses I hit and myself. Bloody headless Andy was scooped into a body bag, and our pockmarked unit was hauled in for evidence. Ignoring all my protesting, I was delivered to the hospital and examined for holes. Hard to determine what was me and what was pieces of Andy. Really, Doc, I'm still in one piece. Only need to clean the gore off. I'll be all right. You're shaking like a leaf ready to fall. When I'm done with you, I'll assign a trauma evaluator before you crash and burn. Losing a partner like that will have long-term effects if left unaddressed. Doctor's orders. Time off while you see a therapist. I'll have the support of all the guys in the precinct. I'm not sure about a shrink, but I promise you, I'm gonna be someone's worst nightmare once I get back on the street to find the monsters that riddled us. They don't understand what they've created. I'll never retire. I'm a lifer now. You can bet. Gonna rain long-term regrets down on them. Noises from the wardrobe. I was crying when Mummy came to tuck me in for the night. Come on, Jamie, my love. Dry those tears away. And please, let's not have any more of that silly nonsense about monsters in your wardrobe again tonight, she whispered, stroking my cheek. You know how cross Bill gets about it. Bill, my stepfather. A horrid man, always shouting at me for one thing or another. How I wish he and Mummy had never met. It was only since he had come to live with us that the scary noises had begun. But they are real, Mummy, I swear to you. I hear them. She sighed and stood up, padded over to the wardrobe and opened the door, revealing a small closet packed with my clothes on hangers, which she shuffled from side to side. "See, sweetheart, only your clothes in here. There's nothing at all to be frightened of now, is there?" I swallowed as hard as I could and managed a tiny little shake of my head. Bill stood watching at the door. He narrowed his eyes, giving me one of his mean sideways looks, and told me that if I disturbed them again that night, I would have to stay inside my room the whole of the following day. Mummy was watching me, so she didn't see the expression in his eyes. He never does it when she's looking. She smiled, kissed me again, and walked over to him. "Look, we'll leave your nightlight on for you, my darling," she said. "Good night now." It was my shivering that woke me. It was exactly 3 o'clock. I am sure of that because I heard our grandfather clock in the hall downstairs chime 3 times. I was ice cold. My duvet had tumbled to the floor and my fingers and toes felt numb. Outside it was ever so windy and raindrops were hammering against the window pane. I liked to keep my curtains open so I could see the man in the moon when he smiled at me. That night, though, I couldn't see him at all. The clouds were hiding him from me. I reached down for my duvet and wrapped it around me, blowing on my fingers to warm them up. That's when I heard it, the rattling of someone fiddling with the wardrobe doorknob. I longed to shout for Mummy, but I knew Bill would be angry if I disturbed them. Instead, I slowly pulled the pillow over my head and tried my best not to listen, but it was no use. Then came a familiar sound. My wardrobe door always creaked when you opened it slowly. I could tell that it was edging open, little by little. You couldn't mistake those short staccato creaks as the door jerked. It had to be the monster, and tonight it was coming out to get me. Normally it stayed inside the wardrobe. My heart began hammering in my ears so loudly, I remember being terrified that it would hear. Curling myself into a ball as tightly as I possibly could, I squeezed my eyes shut and bit down on my lip to stop myself from crying out loud. I remember tasting the blood as it trickled into my mouth, but I still didn't dare move an inch. Eventually, the door stopped moving, and I heard a shuffling of something brushing against wood. Peeping through my fingers, I was just about able to make out a human shape in the dim glow of my nightlight. A smallish figure was standing at the bottom of my bed, staring at me. I could hardly believe it. The monster was no bigger than me. But the thing was, it was pure evil. I just knew. I think that was when I wet the bed in terror. I couldn't help myself. But I couldn't let it know. I remember the sensation of warm liquid spreading down my legs and hoping that if I simply refused to budge, the horrid monster might not find out. Maybe if I recited the Lord's Prayer to myself, it would go away and leave me alone. It stayed there, watching me for ages, whilst I prayed with all my heart for it not to hurt me. Eventually it hissed, "It's time!" Then it stomped over to my door, cracked it open, and slipped out onto the landing. When I heard it knocking on my parents' bedroom door, I almost had heart failure. My stepfather would be furious. It hammered on the door again, and then I heard Bill groan and ask in his cross voice what the hell I thought I was up to. Suddenly, their bedroom door crashed open and slammed against the wall. What I heard in the next few seconds were the worst sounds I had ever heard in my entire life. First, there was a scuffling, and I heard Bill swear out loud. After that, there were lots of heavy crashes, followed by a kind of gurgling and a piercing shriek that sounded like Mummy's voice. Afterwards, I heard her screaming, screaming, and screaming. There were more bangs, then a few resounding thuds and weird moaning noises. And still, the screaming didn't stop. What could I do? I wanted to run and help Mummy, but how could I? Paralyzed by fear, I jammed my fingers hard into my ears to block out her screams. After what seemed like ages, there was silence. Utter silence. Not a sound. I tell you, that deafening silence was 10 times worse than the screaming. I then watched, horrified and open-mouthed, as the monster crept stealthily past my bed without so much as a single glance in my direction, wrenched the wardrobe door open, and stepped inside. It wasn't until it had pulled the door firmly shut with a click that I felt able to move. My pajama bottoms were still soaking wet, and now they felt yucky and cold, but I didn't even care. I jumped up and shot out of my room to see what the monster had done. It had hurt Mummy, I was certain. I had to help her. I spotted Bill first. He lay sprawled face down in the entrance to their bedroom. I didn't care two hoots about Bill, but where was Mummy? I needed to find Mummy. I leaped over the motionless form that had been my stepfather and slipped to my knees in a dark red, sticky puddle of gooey stuff, slowly expanding across the parquet from underneath his head. It was gross. I wiped my hands clean on my pajamas as I struggled to my feet and gazed around. The room looked like a scene from one of those scary murder movies Bill liked to watch on the TV. There she was. My dear mother was slumped sideways, half in, half out of the bed. Her frilly white nightdress was crimson. Her beautiful hazel eyes were wide open, still full of shock, her mouth gaping in a now silent scream. A huge kitchen knife protruded from her throat. I recognized it. It was the sharp, shiny one from the back of the kitchen drawer, the one Bill always used to carve the lamb on Sundays. As gently as I could, I gripped the smooth brown handle of the knife and tried to lever it out of her poor, lifeless body, but it was ever so difficult to do. When it finally came free, there was an awful slurping noise, and more blood trickled down her neck. I fell backwards and let the knife drop to the floor. The coppery smell of all that blood was suddenly overpowering. I think that must have been when I began to scream. I was still screaming when the police broke down the door, having been alerted by Mr. Wilson, our next-door neighbor. I very quickly learned that, just like Mummy and Bill, they didn't believe there was anything or anybody in the wardrobe. Even to this day, nobody believes a word of what I say. It has become unbearably hot in this room. I start to feel skittish and wipe my sweaty palms up and down my jumpsuit legs to prevent my knees from jiggling up and down. It is made of scratchy nylon material. Horrid orange color, too. My jaw clenches tight. "Why doesn't anybody believe me, doctor?" I whisper through gritted teeth. That's all I can remember. I swear to God I have not invented anything. It is honestly what happened on the night my mother and that man were killed. My hands ball themselves into fists. I have learned this is not considered good behavior, however, so I force myself to uncurl them, finger by finger, and carefully place both my rigid hands, palm down and fingers outstretched, on my lap. Tears are flowing, dripping from my chin to my chest. I let them fall, but they begin to cause the cloth to become clammy, and it sticks to my chest. Feels like blood. God, I can't stand it. My left eye twitches and I begin to rock back and forth. My throat is dry. I feel myself slipping. Dr. Simpson is staring at me. "All right, James. I think that is more than enough for today," he says, removing his spectacles and placing them with his pen and pad on the small table at his side. "You've done well. This is fine progress we have made this afternoon. I believe our sessions are finally getting somewhere." He then smiles and reaches for my hand. I'm sweating, shaking, still sobbing. "I'm proud of you, James. This is the first time in the 11 years you've been in here with us that you have actually mentioned these sentiments of ambivalence towards your stepfather. It is excellent that you are beginning to admit and evacuate any feelings of pent-up hatred you have been suppressing all this time. He hands me a small plastic cup and presses a button on his pager. Here you go now. Take your meds. Look, the nurse is here to escort you back to your ward. I'll see you for our next session, same time next week. The Ghost of Old Jeb Brown. Childhood memories of walking home from school on Halloween Day. Cool breezes under overcast skies. The scratching of dried leaves on the pavement as the wind pushed them by. They crunched under my feet and made a swoosh, swoosh sound as I walked through them. When I got home, I raked them up into mounds and cannonballed into them with a splash like crunchy water. My old Labrador retriever with his gray face would find the energy to join in the fun, pouncing on top of me with a vivaciously wagging tail. The neighborhood was always decorated for fall. There was nothing creepy or scary at all. Hay bales and scarecrows peppered the subdivision along with the old, dried-up corn stalks. Every house had a jack-o'-lantern. We'd spread out old newspaper over the table to carve my pumpkin, cutting off the top. I'd scoop out the sticky fruit and separate the seeds. Mom would wash the seeds and salt them up before baking them in the oven while I cut out triangular eyes, a nose, and a goofy smile with only a few teeth. A candle was always placed in the center, giving the pumpkins a ghoulish glow. Homework was done with haste. A shower was taken early. Dinner was served before dark. My costume was never anything fancy. A plastic character's suit with a hard-to-see-through plastic mask that was held on by a thin rubber band. Yet, I was proud of my costume, excited to be for one night the character I chose, all ruined by an overly concerned mom who demanded I wear a jacket. The streetlights came on and the subdivision filled with kids accompanied by adults. There were vampires and princesses, robots and witches. Some costumes were homemade, some were store-bought, some were extravagant, and some were cheap. None of us kids cared. It was Operation Candy. My parents released me like I was a hungry jackal looking for a carcass to feed from. Mom would always stay home to hand out the candy, while Dad double-timed it to keep up with me as I ran from house to house. The Fambros' house was always a good one. Their mom would dress up as a silly scarecrow, much like the one from The Wizard of Oz, and sit out on the front porch. She would ask us if we wanted a trick or a treat. If you answered trick, she would do cartwheels or sing and dance, something funny to entertain us kids. I'd pick trick just for a laugh. The Bedwells' home was my favorite. On their porch, they had a scarecrow they called Old Jeb Brown. It was made of denim overalls and a red and black plaid flannel shirt stuffed with straw, boots for feet, gloves for hands, and a jack-o'-lantern for the head. Inside the head, they put a speaker. Mr. Bedwell would sit on the couch inside and wait for trick-or-treaters to walk up and then scare them. Even though I knew it was coming, he always managed to scare me. They would always invite us in and tell us the story of Old Jeb Brown. Old Jeb once owned all the land the subdivision was built on. For many years, he lived a reclusive lifestyle on the edge of town. He rarely accepted visitors, and never when they were unannounced. He built a rickety barbed wire fence around his property and posted signs that read, "No trespassing. Violators will be shot on sight." He posted those about every 50 yards or so, according to the story. People, for the most part, took that warning seriously. However, every Halloween, there were those few who would bang on his door and yell trick or treat. Old Jeb would greet them at the door with a rifle in hand. People would go scurrying away. Jeb would always fire a warning shot to let them know to never come back. Late one night, on Halloween, 1953, a group of teens felt it was their place to teach old Jeb a lesson in politeness. They snuck up his driveway, threw a flaming bag of poo on his porch, banged on the door, and hid. Jeb never woke to put out the flaming bag, and it caught his porch on fire. The teens who were hiding in the shadows ran off. Jeb died in the house fire. Mr. Bedwell went on to tell us that the following Halloween, those kids went missing, and that they weren't the only ones. There have been cases of missing teens on Halloween over the decades. He believes it was the ghost of old Jeb Brown exacting revenge on bad kids on the anniversary of his death. As a young kid, the story did a good job of scaring me straight. But when I turned 13, it was just a bunch of malarkey. At that age, I hit a growth spurt and was too big to trick or treat. The little things like jumping in the leaves, carving jack-o'-lanterns, and the magic of autumn were lost on me. Frankly, I hated the season because it meant school was well underway. That year, Halloween fell on a Friday, and two of my friends stayed the night at my house. They told me there were other ways to have fun on Halloween than trick-or-treating. We waited until my parents went to bed. We grabbed toilet paper, all the eggs we had, and a couple ball bats. We snuck out of the house late that night. We found a neighbor's house with no lights on and threw toilet paper in their trees, covering it. We then egged their car using half the eggs we had. Then we destroyed their decorations and smashed their mailbox. A light came on in the house and we took off running, dodging behind another house so we wouldn't get caught. We found it all exhilarating, laughing at our antics. We took a shortcut through the yards to the opposite street, Mr. Bedwell's street. My friends saw old Jeb the Scarecrow and immediately wanted to ruin it. I told them I didn't want to mess with that house, that I knew the guy, but they didn't want to listen. They started with the toilet paper, just like the last place. Then they moved on to egging the front of his house. My one friend, Jimmy, grabbed a large landscaping stone from Mr. Bedwell's yard and threw it through his bay window. They turned to run, but Jimmy didn't get away. Old Jeb jumped up and grabbed him. Me and my other friend, Ricky, screamed in fright, but were not about to leave our friend. We started hitting the Scarecrow with the bats, but the bats didn't faze it. By then, the lights were on in Mr. Bedwell's house. He was furious, but ran outside to help Jimmy. The Scarecrow knocked Mr. Bedwell down and ran off with Jimmy. We chased old Jeb all the way to the graveyard. There, Jimmy started sinking into the ground, and the Scarecrow fell into a limp pile of clothes and straw. We grabbed a hold of Jimmy and pulled with all our might, but something stronger was pulling him down. We screamed for him to hold on, but the dirt was rising up over his face. His hands slipped from our grasp, and he was gone. We didn't have time to mourn or dig. The Scarecrow stood back up, alive, and stomped towards us with intent. We scrambled to our feet and ran, but not fast enough. Old Jeb caught Ricky and started dragging him down to the grave. I grabbed Ricky in a bear hug, hoping to keep him above the soil, but I started to sink as well. I let go of Ricky and climbed out. I looked at Ricky. I saw terror in his eyes, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to end up like him and Jimmy. I was scared, so I ran, and I didn't look back. When I got home, I quietly snuck back inside and went to my room upstairs. I looked out the window, and there it was staring up at me. I sat on my bed watching it. It never moved. Not until the sun came up and it collapsed into a pile of straw and clothes again. 30 years later, and I still have to lock myself in my house every Halloween night. The ghost of old Jeb Brown sits outside and waits. Don't tell anyone, it keeps following me. All the time. I've been feeling it for days now. This eerie sensation of being watched. This morning, an envelope slipped under my door. No name, no return address, just a single line written in red ink. Come to the garden on Elm at midnight. Don't be late. My first thought was that it was a prank, maybe a mistake. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I felt that same strange, heavy sensation in my chest, the feeling of being watched. Whoever's been following me wants me to come to this meeting. I should ignore it. It's driving me mad, circling in my head over and over. It doesn't make sense. Why would anyone ask me to meet them in a garden I've never visited? I don't leave this room. I can't leave this room. The thought of stepping outside makes my chest tighten like the poisonous air. The walls aren't walls anymore. They're closing in, pressing closer each day, shrinking until no room is left. I can feel a slow constriction, like the tightening grip of a snake coiling around my chest. It was there again. I felt its rancid and sour breath hovering just behind my neck, the cold seeping into my bones. The buzzing, crawling under my skin, burrowing deep, an itch I can't reach, is maddening. I dug my nails into my arms again and tore at the skin until the blood flowed warm and sticky. It hurt, but I didn't stop. The red smeared against the white of the sheets like some twisted artwork. I laughed. I laughed because the pain reminded me I was still here, that I wasn't gone yet. Not entirely. But the blood, the warmth, it didn't last. It never does. The cold always comes back, dragging me under. I've spent the whole day staring at the envelope, trying to make sense of everything. What does he mean, don't be late? I opened the envelope earlier, but it only made things worse. Inside was a single photograph, a picture of me, taken through the window of my room. The timestamp showed it was taken 2 nights ago, right around when I started feeling like I was being watched. But my room doesn't have a window. It is still me in that photograph. But how? October 12th. I didn't go. I don't know why. I sat here, staring at the clock, watching the minutes crawl by until midnight came and went. I couldn't move. My legs felt heavy like they were stuck to the floor. The envelope is still here where I left it, taunting me. I can't shake the feeling that I wrote it. It's ridiculous. Why would I send something to myself? I checked my desk drawer where I kept my pens and paper, but they were all where I left them. Still, that handwriting is mine. I know it is. I can't deal with that right now. I didn't sleep last night. Or maybe I did. I can't tell anymore. The line between waking and dreaming has blurred into a haze like thick and endless fog rolling in from the sea. I lie there, staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks. They're growing, splintering outwards like delicate spider webs. I wonder if they'll reach me, if they'll come down in shards of plaster and dust, burying me alive. I wouldn't mind. When I close my eyes, I see it clearer now. The dark mass, the shape it takes. God, it's horrific. It's all wrong. Its body is twisted, its limbs are too long, joints are bent at impossible angles, and the skin is slick and black like oil, dripping. And its face, or what should be a face, it shifts, twisting like clay, eyes forming then disappearing, mouths opening and closing, filled with rows of jagged teeth. It stood at the foot of my bed last night. I felt it staring, even though there were no eyes. The weight of its gaze crushed me into the mattress. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My heart pounded so loud I was sure it would burst out of my chest. I could feel it feeding off that fear, growing stronger, reveling in my helplessness. October 13th. I didn't take the pills today. They're trying to poison me. I see it in their eyes when they hand them to me. Their fake smiles stretched too thin. The red-haired one, she's the worst. She is always cheerful. She thinks I'm too far gone to notice. But I do. I notice everything. She came by earlier. I didn't like the way she looked at me, like I'm an animal. I smiled back at her and watched her flinch. She thinks I'm docile, but she doesn't know. She doesn't know what's been following me, what's been whispering in my ear. The envelope's still here, on the nightstand, staring at me. Why can't I stop thinking about it? Why can't I just let it go? The garden on Elm. It's not real. I know that. I know I never wrote it. But sometimes, in the quiet moments, I wonder, what if it's me? What if I've been sending these things to myself all along? Number. That's impossible. I wouldn't do that. I scratched at the walls today, tried to tear them down and tried to escape. I could feel it closing in, but the walls wouldn't give. My fingers bled, my nails broken, but the walls held firm, cold, and unforgiving. I could hear it whispering through the cracks. I can't understand the words, but know they're meant for me. October 14th. The feeling was more vital and intense today. It's getting closer and more aggressive. Every step I took, every corner I turned, was right there. The light stretches it out, twisting it longer and pulling it closer until I feel drowning. I've feared so many things, but nothing like this. It started when I was a kid. My stepfather had this way of punishing me when I did something wrong. He'd shove me into the closet in the basement and lock the door. I can still hear the click of the lock, that final sound before the darkness swallowed me whole. And I remember the worst day, the day it came. It was one of the longest times he'd left me there overnight. I don't remember what I did to deserve it. The punishment lasted longer than usual. I screamed at first, banging on the door, but no one came. They never did. The darkness wrapped itself around me, smothering my cries. It was like a blanket of silence, pressing in closer and closer until the only sound I could hear was my own heartbeat, frantic in my chest. The hunger came first, gnawing at my insides like a rat chewing through bone. Then, the thirst. My lips cracked, and every breath was dry and sharp. The need to go to the bathroom hit next, but I held it for hours, clutching my stomach, praying he'd let me out. But he didn't. Eventually, I couldn't hold it anymore. The urine soaked into my clothes, warm and humiliating at first, then cold and stinking as it mixed with the damp, musty air of the closet. The smell filled the tiny space, suffocating me and burning my nose. I cried, not from pain, but from the shame, the filth. And then, hours later, or maybe minutes, I don't know, that happened too. I had nowhere to go. I couldn't hold it. The shit pressed out of me, warm and sticky, and I felt it spread beneath me as I sat on the wooden floor. The smell was unbearable. My skin crawled with it, with the filth of my own body betraying me, trapped in that black hole of a closet. And that's when I felt it. I can still remember the exact moment. The darkness had changed. It wasn't just empty anymore. It was watching me. It was alive. The air had shifted and thickened like something had slipped into the closet with me. I froze, my body trembling, my throat dry and raw from screaming. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat like a drum, slow and sickening. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there. I could feel it hovering just out of reach. A presence. It wasn't like the darkness that had always terrified me. It was something far worse. Something that was feeding on my fear, on the filth, on the weakness I had become. That's when I first sensed it. Whatever it was, it had slipped into my world and has never left me. October 15th. The nurses, they're scared of me now. I see it in their eyes, how they flinch when I move too quickly, and how they talk in hushed whispers just outside my door. They think I don't notice, but I do. The way they look at me, like I'm a rabid dog, something to be caged and kept away. Good. The reddish nurse came again today. Her smile is unnatural, stretched so tight it looks like it might split her face open. She handed me the pills. Blue ones this time. I took them from her and felt their weight in my hand. But I didn't swallow them. I smiled back at her. Pulling the corners of my mouth up like that felt strange. My face was stiff, unused to the motion. I wonder if she noticed. I let the pills slip from my hand and watched them fall to the floor, bouncing once or twice before disappearing into the shadows. The shadows have been moving more lately, creeping across the floor like they're alive and hungry. I like to watch her bend to pick it up. Every time, her skirt hikes up just enough for me to see the curve of her thighs, the pale skin peeking out from beneath the hem. She does it deliberately. I know she does. She thinks I'm a vegetable, a shattered man with a broken mind locked away inside my own head. She thinks I don't notice. But she's wrong. She doesn't know I'm not alone. I've never been alone. So, she was honestly surprised when I knocked her to the floor. It wasn't hard. She's small, fragile. Her eyes widened, lips parting in shock as I grabbed her and shoved her down. Her breath hitched, a sharp air intake, and I could feel the excitement, the pulse of something dark and wild rushing through me. It wasn't me. I wasn't in control. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. I didn't want to hurt her. It wasn't me. It was the thing that's been with me all along. The thing that's been watching now, waiting and feeding. It pushed me, whispered in my prank ear, and told me what to do. I didn't have a choice. She cried out, but the buzzing in my head and the ticking clock muffled her voice. I could barely hear her. I could scarcely feel her anymore. Everything was slipping away, fading into the hum, into the dark. It's inside me now. I can feel it crawling under my skin, controlling my wants and thoughts. It's too late. I can't stop it anymore. I'm laughing again. I can't help it. The sound bubbles up from deep inside me, harsh and cracked. It echoes off the walls, filling the room. The nurse looks up at me with wide, terrified eyes, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She doesn't understand. She will. They all will. October 16th. I woke up choking on my own breath. It was standing over me, I swear. A dark mass, shifting, warping, like it was trying to decide what shape to take. My body was frozen. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. All I could do was watch as it hovered, staring, the cold of it seeping into my skin like ice. It didn't touch me. Not yet. But I couldn't feel it anymore. So close. I've heard about sleep paralysis. The doctors like to throw that term around like it explains everything. But this was different. It wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't a dream. It was real. It was there, watching me with eyes that didn't exist. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The laugh just bubbled up out of me, desperate, choking. I laughed because what else could I do? What else do you do when the thing following you for years finally finds its way into your room? They put me in isolation after that. She said I was disturbing the others. I was screaming, they said, but I wasn't. It was the laugh. It's funny, really. It's funny how no one else sees it. The lights flickered today. I counted the seconds between the flickers. 3, then 5, then 8, then 1. Erratic. Like something was playing with the switch. It's toying with me now. That's fine. Let it play its game. I scratched at my arm until the skin broke. The nurses tried to stop me, but I didn't care. I needed to feel something. The pain is real. The blood is real. Thick, warm, dripping down my fingers. I let it pool in my palm for a moment, staring at warmth. It and watching it glisten in the pale light. It's funny how thirsty you get. I tasted it, just a little. Just enough to remember what it feels like to be alive. It tastes like metal, sharp and bitter, but it's mine. They found me after that and tried to patch me up, but they couldn't stop me from bleeding. They can't stop what's already inside me. The buzzing is louder now. It's deafening. October 17th. The walls. They're wrong today. I don't know how to explain it, but they feel different. The texture is off, as if the paint is peeling away to reveal something underneath. I scraped at the surface until my fingers bled again, nails tearing against the plaster. I had to know. I had to see what was underneath. It was hollow. Behind the walls was nothing, just darkness, an endless void stretching out forever. I could feel the pull of it, dragging me in and whispering promises of relief and escape. But it's a lie. I know what's really waiting in that darkness. It's there, waiting for me to slip. I won't. Not yet. October 19th. Everything is sharper today. The edges are too bright, too hard. The air smells of chemicals, bleach, ammonia, and something sweet and sickly. I gagged when I woke up, the stench clinging to my skin and the sheets. The buzzing in the light is louder than ever, a constant hum that vibrates through my teeth, rattling my bones. I saw it again this morning, not just a flicker. No, this time, it was there, fully formed, standing in the corner, watching, waiting. Its face, oh God, its face, was mine, twisted and distorted, like looking into a broken mirror, the features all wrong, stretched, eyes too big, mouth too wide, filled with jagged teeth. I screamed. I screamed until my throat was raw, and my voice gave out, but no one came. No one heard me. They never do. Do you hear that? No, you don't. You're sitting there, comfortable, safe, reading this like it's just the ramblings of a madman. But you're wrong. It's not me that's crazy. It's you. You don't see it yet. But you will. You'll feel it soon enough. It's always there, waiting, watching, lurking in the corners, just beyond the light. I'm sorry for you. I really am. You'll understand soon enough. You'll realize it's been watching you too. It'll slip into your room and mind, just like it did with me. And when it does, when you finally see your shadow, don't be stupid. Don't be like me. They won't believe you, and it'll only make it stronger. Be clever. Be silent. October surprise. Oi choy, show me your tongue. That's what you got to say to a suspected Serp. They can't hide their forked tongues, even if they've gotten better at copying just about everything else. Ask anyone, and they'll tell you. I mean, it was all over the feeds, this little old man. He could have been anybody's grandpa, except he was living under a stolen ID and preying on small critters near a school zone. but luckily some Final Front guys caught him, and when they backed him into a corner, out came that freaky SERP tongue. And that's just one example. Who knows how many more are living among us? But we're not going to sit idly by and let it happen. Sometimes all it takes is a few good men to make a difference. That's why I answered the private invite on my holo. Want to do something about the SERPs? That flashed once, then gave the when and where before the letters scrambled and dissolved. It was fast, like 3 seconds, probably to test our memories and observational skills. We're meeting at the shuttered Lindbergh Library in a part of Southside Apex that hugs the wall along the stretch. And I get there way before sundown to show them I know how to do recon. I'm wearing my urban camo and blending in with a piece of plasteel that hasn't been added to the wall yet. I count 4 guys go into the alley behind the library. Not a one sees me, but I'm not following until it's time, because I'm precise that way. Oi, Choi. Some guy I didn't see go and sticks his head out the alleyway. His head is like a crete block with 2 slits, and those slits are looking right at me. I stiffen because maybe he's going to disrespect me and ask to see my tongue, but he just jerks his big head to tell me to get moving. In the alley, he rolls aside a dumpster to reveal a hole. I see his black shirt and the crossed hammers over stars and bars on his forearm. That means he's Final Front, so I know I can trust him. We walk down to the library basement where floodlights and empty shelves line the wall. The 4 other guys are down there, plus 2 Final Front guardsmen and some cyberpunk chick fiddling with a gunmetal box on a fold-out table. When they jam our feeds and make us hand over our holos, I know this is some alpha code red shit, and we're in it for real. Outstanding. The guy with the big head kicks aside some books that got burned after everyone realized the feeds were better, then stands in front of us. Everyone straightens up without being told. You can call me Sergeant Bill, but don't you dare call me sir, he says, kind of cool and strict at the same time. Now, you may not know us personally, but we know you. Every one of you has been carefully selected, but if you don't agree, if you have any doubts, then there's the door. No? Then let's begin. You men have been selected to infiltrate the SERPs and reveal the enemy within. My heart hammers in my ears, then skips a beat when Sergeant Bill says the mission pays double time with a bonus for each SERP we expose. Wow, Choi. I mean, I do it for free because I love Apex City. But the double time pay with bonuses is how I know Chancellor Ike must have our back on this mission. He's generous and understands the working man like that. It's like Chancellor Ike's in this basement with us, but we can't say his name. I mean, we can, but no one does out of respect. He's already doing so much while the Weepsters and SERP deniers attack him from all sides, so we can't say his name without giving him something else to deal with. Now, you might ask yourself, what about training? Sergeant Bill says, there'll be none of that. Training will give you away in this scenario. That makes sense. SERPs are trying to be just like us, so they won't know the difference if we be ourselves. Sergeant Bill continues on and takes the words right out of my mouth. I nod and see others doing the same. We all get it, even though none of us knows each other. I bet Chancellor Ike planned it that way through the Final Front. He's holding a rally all the way on the other side of Apex tonight. That's smart. Plausible deniability to keep us all safe. I watch the Sarge talk and know we're tuned into the same frequency. Choi's a badass. I bet if the basement ceiling caved in, he'd be able to stop it with his head. He's solid as a post, and I bet he's seen some shit. That makes me feel better about how easily he spotted me outside. I imagine already being out in the field and passing him in the street while I'm undercover. We won't so much as look at each other because we're professionals. but we'll both know that we're part of an unspoken brotherhood. There will be no medals for me because I can't talk about what I do. Not even to my wife when I have one. She'll respect that I don't talk. Maybe I'll even meet my future wife on a mission. I glance at the cyberpunk chick still messing with the box on the table. She's actually kind of hot. Then, the basement gets pretty quiet. Sergeant Bill is looking at us like he expects someone to say something. One of the other guys, a redhead with too many freckles, raises his hand. What if the Serps want us to eat someone's cat, sir? What did you call me? So, Sergeant? Anyone here want to help him out with that question? You eat the damn cat, I say. What did you say? The Sarge gets in my face, but I stare straight ahead and repeat it. Did you hear that? He asks cat question guy. Then Sarge repeats my words like he's in awe. Even better, he gets all of the other guys to repeat it. Yeah, Choi, I was made for this. Then we get serious. Sergeant Bill says we all got to make a temporary sacrifice. I guess we all knew it was coming, but it's still hard to hear it. We're all going to have to get Serp tongues before going out into the stretch. Cat question guy looks at me, maybe hoping I'll speak up and give him an excuse to chicken out. Nope, not gonna happen. We stand there in silence until the moment's gone. Sarge tells us we'll get out normal tongues back once the mission's done. Then he drops some inside knowledge that we didn't know. The Serps don't talk when they're alone among their own kind because they're not advanced enough to have their own language. They only know how to copy. We trust you, but we can't have you slipping up and talking when you make first contact out in the stretch. For that reason, you're going to have to get your vocal cords paralyzed. Sounds worse than it really is, and it's even more temporary than the tongue mods. No reversal needed. Now, if you go see that lovely lady over there, she'll get you sorted. Any volunteers? I double time it over to the cyberpunk chick because I don't want any of the other guys making a first impression before I do. She's wearing blackout contact lenses, so it's like I'm staring into her soul when she looks up at me. Hey, so it's really simple. You put your face in there. She rotates the gunmetal box my way. The top and side facing me are open, and the inside is white foam with a face-shaped hole. Then you stick your tongue in there. She points to a black hole that lines up with the mouth of the white face hole. There's something down there, something with metal legs. Having second thoughts, it only hurts for a second. It's nothing compared to this. She opens her mouth and shows me her tongue stud. I run my eyes over her metal, leather, and tattoos to let her know fear is the farthest thing from my mind right now. I don't know. Will I still be able to do this? I do the old 3-leaf clover tongue trick and let her get a good look while the other guys line up behind me. I stare into her designer eyes. Someone behind me coughs, but I keep staring until she gives a slow smile. Then I put my face in the box. She puts her hand on the back of my head and strokes my hair. We'll probably tell our kids about this moment. She's right. It's quick, more like a millisecond, an intense burst like a laser slicing my head down the middle. But then it's gone, and whatever's in that hole sprays something icy and soothing into my throat. Her hand stops stroking my hair, and I take my head out of the box. Another, heavier hand lands on my shoulder before I can get her hollow. It's Sergeant Bill, and he's guiding me back up the basement stairs while I blink away the white spots in my vision. Let's check you out here, soldier, he says when we're next to the hole that leads back out into the alleyway. It's dark now, so he pulls out a pen light and a hand mirror to give me a look. Oi, Choi. I try to say it, but my new tongue just flaps around. That's when I remember about the frozen vocal cords. Sarge plays it cool and gives me a moment to fight down the panic. I take another look. There's not even a speck of blood, and a serp's tongue isn't like a snake's tongue. It's more like two smaller human tongues that can move in different directions. If I hold it still, I can barely tell the difference. Sarge is right. It'll be easy to reverse. I close my mouth and look at him. Congratulations. You're first out in the field, but we have a special surprise before your stretch deployment. We couldn't tell you until you reach this stage, but you get to meet him. Tonight. Chancellor Ike. He doesn't have to say the name. As he gives me the details of how I'll get to the rally and what happens after, my eyes start to tear up. I clear my throat, but even that doesn't make a sound. Hey, you know how to use one of these? Sergeant Bill asks as I'm about to leave. He hands me something that feels light and solid at the same time. That's a ghost gun, undetectable and 3D printed to match the color of your skin. You get just the one shot, but you might need it if things go sideways with the serps. Keep it close. All right, soldier. I'll leave you to it. He shakes my hand before going back to the basement. Even if I could talk, I wouldn't have the words. The risk Chancellor Ike is taking for us goes beyond words. He didn't have to, but he did, and he's letting me meet him with a loaded weapon on my person. That's what makes him great. His ability to completely trust someone in a world filled with lies. I take a steadying breath, then remind myself to breathe only through my nose from here on out to keep my serp tongue hidden. The cruiser is already waiting there in the alley, just like Sergeant Bill said it would be. Nothing fancy, but it hovers smoothly enough over the south side's cracked pavement, then picks up speed on the north side's shiny streets where the Weepster elites live in high-rises and pretend that serps aren't flooding our city with sacromine. The driver doesn't say a word or even look at me. He just hands me my rally ticket and lets me off a few blocks from the Apex Arena. I show my VIP ticket, and the metal detector is quiet like me as I zip through security. At first, I'm a little paranoid about someone trying to start a conversation with me, but it's easy to just clap, nod, and smile with my mouth closed after Chancellor Ike comes out and starts talking. My seat's in row 9, close enough to the stage that I can hear his voice boom before the speakers farther back in the stadium amplify it. He looks even bigger in real life. He makes this packed stadium feel small. And it's not like I think he's a god. I know he's not perfect, and he'll be the first to say so. But that's why he's our last chance. He's not afraid to say what's on everyone's mind. Then, right in the middle of Chancellor Ike's story about how he made the Weepsters pay their fair share, someone 2 rows ahead of me stands up from his seat. It seems like the wrong time for a standing ovation. Plus, he's facing the wrong way. He climbs on his seat to put himself even higher over the seated crowd. That's when I see it's Cat Question Guy from the basement. One of his eyes is swollen shut, and the other eye is bugging out of his skull, searching the stadium for something behind me. I turn my head to look back and see others doing the same. Chancellor Ike can't help but notice. Sir, do you need assistance? Do you need someone to teach you how to sit? This guy. Look at this wacko. Are you lost? Seats are for sitting, sir. Cat Question Guy starts climbing over the other people to get out of his row. People are recording him on their hollows because that's what people do. Idiot. He's going to compromise the mission. We need some assistance over here. The speakers carry Chancellor Ike's voice across the stadium. Cat Question Guy takes off up the aisle, then runs back toward the stage as security comes down the aisle after him. Oh shit. Does Cat Question Guy also have his own ghost gun? Maybe he's a double agent. Maybe the Serps are smarter than we think. More security is closing in on the stage from both sides, but they'll never get there in time to save Chancellor Ike. I put my hand on the ghost gun in my pocket and get to my feet. But then I see Sergeant Bill at the head of security sprinting down the aisle. Gun! Gun! He's got a gun! Sarge draws his own piece without breaking stride and drops Cat Question Guy with a quick burst to the chest. Everyone around me has dropped to the floor with their hollows hanging overhead to still take in the action. I realize I'm still on my feet. Sergeant Bill glances at me. I look away and start sinking to the floor to keep my cover, but something stops me. He's standing at the end of my row, and those slits in that big block of a head are still trained on me. Now his gun is too. Check the tongue on the one in the aisle, he says, without taking his eyes off me. I think he was signaling this guy. My hand is still frozen on the ghost gun in my pocket, and my words are frozen in a mouth made to betray me. Sarge plants his feet wide and shows me his teeth. Oi Choi, let me see that tongue. October surprise. Oi Choi, show me your tongue. That's what you got to say to a suspected Serp. They can't hide their forked tongues even if they've gotten better at copying just about everything else. Ask anyone and they'll tell you. I mean, it was all over the feeds, this little old man. He could have been anybody's grandpa, except he was living under a stolen ID and preying on small critters near a school zone. But luckily, some Final Front guys caught him, and when they backed him into a corner, out came that freaky Serp tongue. And that's just one example. Who knows how many more are living among us? But we're not going to sit idly by and let it happen. Sometimes all it takes is a few good men to make a difference. That's why I answered the private invite on my holo. Want to do something about the Serps? That flashed once, then gave the when and where before the letters scrambled and dissolved. It was fast, like 3 seconds, probably to test our memories and observational skills. We're meeting at the shuttered Lindbergh Library in a part of Southside Apex that hugs the wall along the stretch, and I get there way before sundown to show them I know how to do recon. I'm wearing my urban camo and blending in with a piece of plasteel that hasn't been added to the wall yet. I count 4 guys go into the alley behind the library. Not a one sees me, but I'm not following until it's time because I'm precise that way. Oi Choi. Some guy I didn't see go in sticks his head out the alleyway. His head is like a creep block with 2 slits, and those slits are looking right at me. I stiffen because maybe he's going to disrespect me and ask to see my tongue, but he just jerks his big head to tell me to get moving. In the alley, he rolls aside a dumpster to reveal a hole. I see his black shirt and the crossed hammers over stars and bars on his forearm. That means he's Final Front, so I know I can trust him. We walk down to the library basement, where floodlights and empty shelves line the wall. The 4 other guys are down there, plus 2 Final Front guardsmen and some cyberpunk chick fiddling with a gunmetal box on a fold-out table. When they jam our feeds and make us hand over our holos, I know this is some Alpha Code Red shit, and we're in it for real. Outstanding. The guy with the big head kicks aside some books that got burned after everyone realized the feeds were better, then stands in front of us. Everyone straightens up without being told. You can call me Sergeant Bill, but don't you dare call me sir, he says, kind of cool and strict at the same time. Now, you may not know us personally, but we know you. Every one of you has been carefully selected, but if you don't agree, if you have any doubts, then there's the door. No? Then let's begin. You men have been selected to infiltrate the Serps and reveal the enemy within. My heart hammers in my ears, then skips a beat when Sergeant Bill says the mission pays double time with a bonus for each SERP we expose. Wow, Choi. I mean, I'd do it for free because I love Apex City. But the double time pay with bonuses is how I know Chancellor Ike must have our back on this mission. He's generous and understands the working man like that. It's like Chancellor Ike's in this basement with us, but we can't say his name. I mean, we can, but no one does out of respect. He's already doing so much while the Weepsters and SERP deniers attack him from all sides, so we can't say his name without giving him something else to deal with. Now, you might ask yourself, what about training? Sergeant Bill says, there'll be none of that. Training will give you away in this scenario. That makes sense. SERPs are trying to be just like us, so they won't know the difference if we be ourselves. Sergeant Bill continues on and takes the words right out of my mouth. I nod and see others doing the same. We all get it, even though none of us knows each other. I bet Chancellor Ike planned it that way through the final front. He's holding a rally all the way on the other side of Apex tonight. That's smart. Plausible deniability to keep us all safe. I watch the Sarge talk and know we're tuned into the same frequency. Choi's a badass. I bet if the basement ceiling caved in, he'd be able to stop it with his head. He's solid as a post, and I bet he's seen some shit. That makes me feel better about how easily he spotted me outside. I imagine already being out in the field and passing him in the street while I'm undercover. We won't so much as look at each other because we're professionals, but we'll both know that we're part of an unspoken brotherhood. There will be no medals for me because I can't talk about what I do, not even to my wife when I have one. She'll respect that I don't talk. Maybe I'll even meet my future wife on a mission. I glance at the cyberpunk chick still messing with the box on the table. She's actually kind of hot. Then, the basement gets pretty quiet. Sergeant Bill is looking at us like he expects someone to say something. One of the other guys, a redhead with too many freckles, raises his hand. What if the SERPs want us to eat someone's cat, sir? What did you call me? See, Sergeant. Anyone here want to help him out with that question? You eat the damn cat, I say. What did you say? The Sarge gets in my face, but I stare straight ahead and repeat it. Did you hear that? He asks cat question guy. Then Sarge repeats my words like he's in awe. Even better, he gets all of the other guys to repeat it. Yeah, Choi, I was made for this. Then we get serious. Sergeant Bill says we all gotta make a temporary sacrifice. I guess we all knew it was coming, but it's still hard to hear it. We're all gonna have to get SERP tongues before going out into the stretch. Cat question guy looks at me, maybe hoping I'll speak up and give him an excuse to chicken out. Nope, not going to happen. We stand there in silence until the moment's gone. Sarge tells us we'll get out normal tongues back once the mission's done. Then he drops some inside knowledge that we didn't know. The SERPs don't talk when they're alone among their own kind because they're not advanced enough to have their own language. They only know how to copy. We trust you, but we can't have you slipping up and talking when you make first contact out in the stretch. For that reason, you're going to have to get your vocal cords paralyzed. Sounds worse than it really is, and it's even more temporary than the tongue mods. No reversal needed. Now, if you go see that lovely lady over there, she'll get you sorted. Any volunteers? I double time it over to the cyberpunk chick because I don't want any of the other guys making a first impression before I do. She's wearing blackout contact lenses, so it's like I'm staring into her soul when she looks up at me. Hey, so it's really simple. You put your face in there. She rotates the gunmetal box my way. The top and side facing me are open. and the inside is white foam with a face-shaped hole. Then you stick your tongue in there. She points to a black hole that lines up with the mouth of the white face hole. There's something down there, something with metal legs. Having second thoughts? It only hurts for a second. It's nothing compared to this. She opens her mouth and shows me her tongue stud. I run my eyes over her metal, leather, and tattoos to let her know fear is the farthest thing from my mind right now. I don't know. Will I still be able to do this? I do the old 3-leaf clover tongue trick and let her get a good look while the other guys line up behind me. I stare into her designer eyes. Someone behind me coughs, but I keep staring until she gives a slow smile. Then I put my face in the box. She puts her hand on the back of my head and strokes my hair. We'll probably tell our kids about this moment. She's right. It's quick, more like a millisecond, an intense burst like a laser slicing my head down the middle. But then it's gone, and whatever's in that hole sprays something icy and soothing into my throat. Her hand stops stroking my hair, and I take my head out of the box. Another, heavier hand lands on my shoulder before I can get her hollow. It's Sergeant Bill, and he's guiding me back up the basement stairs while I blink away the white spots in my vision. "Let's check you out here, soldier," he says, when we're next to the hole that leads back out into the alleyway. It's dark now, so he pulls out a pen light and a hand mirror to give me a look. "Oi choi." I try to say it, but my new tongue just flaps around. That's when I remember about the frozen vocal cords. Sarge plays it cool and gives me a moment to fight down the panic. I take another look. There's not even a speck of blood, and a serp's tongue isn't like a snake's tongue. It's more like two smaller human tongues that can move in different directions. If I hold it still, I can barely tell the difference. Sarge is right. It'll be easy to reverse. I close my mouth and look at him. "Congratulations, you're first out in the field, but we have a special surprise before your stretch deployment. We couldn't tell you until you reach this stage, but you get to meet him. Tonight, Chancellor Ike. He doesn't have to say the name. As he gives me the details of how I'll get to the rally and what happens after, my eyes start to tear up. I clear my throat, but even that doesn't make a sound. "Hey, you know how to use one of these?" Sergeant Bill asks as I'm about to leave. He hands me something that feels light and solid at the same time. That's a ghost gun, undetectable and 3D printed to match the color of your skin. You get just the one shot, but you might need it if things go sideways with the SERPs. Keep it close. "All right, soldier, I'll leave you to it." He shakes my hand before going back to the basement. Even if I could talk, I wouldn't have the words. The risk Chancellor Ike is taking for us goes beyond words. He didn't have to, but he did, and he's letting me meet him with a loaded weapon on my person. That's what makes him great. His ability to completely trust someone in a world filled with lies. I take a steadying breath, then remind myself to breathe only through my nose from here on out to keep my SERP tongue hidden. The cruiser is already waiting there in the alley, just like Sergeant Bill said it would be. Nothing fancy, but it hovers smoothly enough over the south side's cracked pavement, then picks up speed on the north side's shiny streets where the Weepster elites live in high-rises and pretend that SERPs aren't flooding our city with sacramine. The driver doesn't say a word or even look at me. He just hands me my rally ticket and lets me off a few blocks from the Apex arena. I show my VIP ticket, and the metal detector is quiet like me as I zip through security. At first, I'm a little paranoid about someone trying to start a conversation with me, but it's easy to just clap, nod, and smile with my mouth closed after Chancellor Ike comes out and starts talking. My seat's in row 9, close enough to the stage that I can hear his voice boom before the speakers farther back in the stadium amplify it. He looks even bigger in real life. He makes this packed stadium feel small. And it's not like I think he's a god. I know he's not perfect, and he'll be the first to say so. But that's why he's our last chance. He's not afraid to say what's on everyone's mind. Then, right in the middle of Chancellor Ike's story about how he made the Weepsters pay their fair share, someone 2 rows ahead of me stands up from his seat. It seems like the wrong time for a standing ovation. Plus, he's facing the wrong way. He climbs on his seat to put himself even higher over the seated crowd. That's when I see it's Cat Question Guy from the basement. One of his eyes is swollen shut, and the other eye is bugging out of his skull, searching the stadium for something behind me. I turn my head to look back and see others doing the same. Chancellor Ike can't help but notice. Sir? Sir, do you need assistance? Do you need someone to teach you how to sit? This guy. Look at this wacko. Are you lost? Seats are for sitting, sir. Cat Question Guy starts climbing over the other people to get out of his row. People are recording him on their hollows because that's what people do. Idiot. He's going to compromise the mission. We need some assistance over here. The speakers carry Chancellor Ike's voice across the stadium. Cat Question Guy takes off up the aisle, then runs back toward the stage as security comes down the aisle after him. Oh shit, does Cat Question Guy also have his own ghost gun? Maybe he's a double agent. Maybe the Serps are smarter than we think. More security is closing in on the stage from both sides, but they'll never get there in time to save Chancellor Ike. I put my hand on the ghost gun in my pocket and get to my feet. But then I see Sergeant Bill at the head of security sprinting down the aisle. Gun! Gun! He's got a gun! Sarge draws his own piece without breaking stride and drops Cat Question Guy with a quick burst to the chest. Everyone around me has dropped to the floor with their hollows hanging overhead to still take in the action. I realize I'm still on my feet. Sergeant Bill glances at me. I look away and start sinking to the floor to keep my cover, but something stops me. He's standing at the end of my row, and those slits in that big block of a head are still trained on me. Now, his gun is too. Check the tongue on the one in the aisle, he says, without taking his eyes off me. I think he was signaling this guy. My hand is still frozen on the ghost gun in my pocket, and my words are frozen in a mouth made to betray me. Sarge plants his feet wide and shows me his teeth. Oi, Choi, let me see that tongue, insatiable darkness. Not the kind that comes when you close your eyes. This is something else. Heavy, dense, like the world's been erased. It's pressing down, sinking through me. I can't breathe, can I? My chest should be moving, doing something. I don't know why I expect that. Then, something else. A noise. No, not a noise. A memory. I love you, babe. A woman's voice, warm, laughing. I can almost feel her next to me, see her face, smell her perfume, something like freshly peeled oranges. Gone. Just like that. I try to hold on to it, but it slips away like smoke. Something aches where the memory was, filling empty spaces, like something lost. Am I lost? No, I'm here. Here in the dark, here in the earth pressing in on all sides. It is cold, deep in my bones, in my flesh. No, it's wrong. I feel something slipping, a part of myself loosening, unraveling, sinking into the dark. I try to reach for it, to grab hold of me, but it's fading fast, sinking below the surface like a drowning man. I tell myself, I'm still here, I'm still someone, but it feels like a lie. Why can't I move? I try to lift an arm, a hand, anything, but everything's sluggish. My fingers claw at nothing, something below, above, heavy, settled. I should be moving. I should be. Then it hits me, clear and sharp, like a broken bone. I'm dead. I'm dead. I don't breathe. My chest is still cold, rotting. A surge of panic hits, a sensation I didn't know I could still feel. I close my eyes, or maybe they were already closed, and try to piece together bits of memory clinging to me. A bright day, a laughing face, a small sticky hand in mine. Gone. Gone before I can feel it. The weight around me presses harder, like the ground itself is claiming me, holding me down. I don't know how I know, but I know I shouldn't be here. Shouldn't be this. I should be someone else. Happy birthday. Her voice echoed through me, through the dark. I don't know who she is, but the words cut through me, raw. I remember her laughing, brushing a stray hair behind her ear, her eyes catching the light in that way that always made me stop and stare. She'd squeeze my hand and whisper, "You're my forever." The words are faint now, slipping away, but the warmth of them lingers enough to hurt. I claw at the darkness. I don't mean to. I don't have to. My fingers curl through the dirt, tearing, dragging myself upward. My hands pull, dig, until I feel the damp, cold earth under my nails, grinding against bone. The part of me that still thinks cringes. The other part? It just keeps going. It's like I'm watching from far away, a thought pulsing through my mind. Get out. Get out. Not a choice, an order I can't ignore, from deep inside, where the human parts of me are fading fast. I don't know how long I claw, but the earth loosens above me, cold air seeping in, something other than the dirt. It's thin, stale, the first taste of the world outside, and it makes me feel alive. Alive and wrong. My head breaks the surface, and the night air hits me, sharp. I gasp, but the air scrapes through me like glass. The world is blurry, washed out under the moonlight. Grave markers surround me, jagged teeth against the sky. This is where I came from, where they buried me. I'm a corpse, crawling out of my own grave. The thought jolts, but it's distant, almost faint, like something I heard once and already forgot. Then that hunger, the one buried under memories, under voices, stirs, an ache deep in what's left of me, stronger than anything else. I push forward, not thinking, just moving, pulled by instinct, by the urge rising, undeniable. I'm dead. I'm broken. But I need something. I can't stop. I can't go back. The first thing I see, really see, under the sickly cast of the moon, is my hand, if you can call it that. It's a mess of sagging skin stretched over bone, torn in places, bits of muscle clinging to knobby joints, fingers twisted and rigid, blackened nails caked with dirt and something else I don't want to name. The sight, this thing I'm looking at, moving like it's mine, hits me like an electric shock, horror rushing up, strangling me. God, what am I? I try to scream, but all that comes out is a sound, low, guttural, inhuman, like an animal caught in a trap. My hand, my arm. No, this isn't my body. It can't be. The skin hangs in loose, rotting patches where it's not already gone, exposing sinew and yellowed bone. I look down and see my clothes, shredded, filthy, stained with patches that could only be. I shut down the thought, but the nausea twists inside me, pulling me towards something deeper. And then, as the horror swells, something else creeps in. It starts as a twitch, an deep and feral, like a slow burn crawling from my center outward. It coils in my stomach, my muscles, my bones, driving out everything else. A hunger, sharp, jagged, specific. I don't just want food. I want something else. Something alive. Number no, don't think it. Don't even say it. You don't want this. But I do. It's already there, growing, swelling, filling the hollow spaces inside until there's nothing left but the hunger. I try to push it down, to hold it back, but it's like caging fire. It flares, a force driving me to move, to push one unsteady, broken foot in front of the other, leaving damp streaks of earth where I walk. Ahead, movement, shadows, soft and slow. A person, bundled in a coat, walking the edge of the graveyard, flashlight in hand. I want to warn them, tell them to turn around, to run. Stop! But my body doesn't listen. I lurch forward. I'm watching, screaming inside, but I'm just a passenger, shackled here, while something else, some twisted, primal urge, takes the reins. My mouth opens, something wet and rotten drips down my chin, spilling onto torn clothes. But I can't stop. I'm close enough now to see him clearly, middle-aged, a little tired, maybe a little sad. He notices me, stops, frowning. Are you okay? His voice shakes, holding the flashlight up, illuminating my face. The light hits his eyes, wide with shock, as he takes in my face. His jaw drops, his lips tremble. Oh my God! Run! I want to scream. Run! But my mouth twists, letting out a moan, low and ragged, and it's enough to send him stumbling back, breath hitching in fear. He turns, but it's too late. My body surges forward, faster than I should be able to move, faster than anything this decayed body should manage. I catch him from behind, fingers sinking into his shoulders. I feel his body seize, the heat of him, the life. The hunger digs deeper, takes control of my hands, my teeth, drive into him, tearing at flesh like it's some kind of drug, some twisted ecstasy. He screams, his voice cutting through the night, but my body just keeps going. My teeth sink into his shoulder, the taste that hits my tongue. It's warm, alive. It fills me in a way nothing else can, something thick and metallic spilling down my throat, coating my mouth, and there's a sick satisfaction that follows, a relief even, like I've finally given in to something I didn't know I wanted. Stop. Please. God, just stop. But there's no stopping. My mouth pulls back, jaws snapping down, over and over, feeling skin and muscle tear, tasting the salt and the heat of his blood. His body twists, weak hands pounding against me, scratching, fighting. But his voice is breaking, giving way to soft, strangled cries. It's him and me, my body devouring his, my mind screaming in silent horror, torn between the repulsion and the craving, both so strong I don't know where one ends and the other begins. I taste his life fading, bit by bit, until he stops moving, limp beneath me. My hands fall to my sides, and I'm left there, panting, mouth and hands covered in his blood, insides roiling with satisfaction and disgust. The hunger settles, just a little, but doesn't go away. It sits there, dark, waiting. I know it'll be back. I look down at what's left of him, the bloodied mess that used to be a person. Pieces of him are scattered around me, stained on my clothes, smeared on my hands, and I feel nothing. Not horror, not revulsion, just emptiness. Number. That's not right. There's something else, something worse. I feel good, sated. A part of me is horrified by this, revolted. But that part feels so far away, drowned by the darkness, the hunger whispering again, like an old friend, like a promise. I don't know what I am anymore, but I know what I'll do. When the hunger comes back, I'll follow. There's blood on my hands, dark, drying, almost black in the moonlight. It stains the shredded skin, sinking into the folds and cracks as if it belongs there. I stare, feeling nothing, but then a name surfaces in my mind, just a whisper that strikes like lightning. Emily. It hangs there, echoing in the dark. A face appears, flickers, blurs, her eyes dark and warm, framed by wavy brown hair. I almost feel her, the laugh that carries through time. She's saying something to me, but her voice is faint as if drowned. I love you. The statement hits me, and with it, shame, thick and heavy.